second?
Okay.
Well, thanks, Sam. I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Finance to order on March 16th, 2023. Welcome, everyone. It's 7:03 p.m. First up, seating alternates is Lisan or Jim.
Jim on?
I bet he is, yes.
Yes, I'm on, Stephanie.
Would you consent to be nominated to be seated?
I move that Jim be seated.
Oh,
No.
can't do that.
Can't take any action.
We're not going to take action anyway, but Jim, jump in anytime, okay? I
Certainly.
just want to say,
Oh, is this a special meeting or something?
no, it's a rookie error. It's a situation where I sent the agenda to everyone, and I thought I'd send it to the town clerks until one of the board members said, hey, I know I have this, but but the town clerk didn't post it, so it wasn't her. She didn't have it in hand, so I apologize for that rookie error. But it means we can still deliberate, we can have our presentation, we can do everything else,
We just
but
don't vote.
we cannot make motions and vote,
Oh,
except apparently a motion to adjourn.
oh, good.
So, or you could just presume Pete will just stand up and he'll start walking out and we'll know it's time. So I apologize for that. And so we won't see it alternates, but we would, and we won't approve minutes, but we will do present to speak. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to speak? Nope. Is there anyone online who would like to speak?
Hi, this is Nick Tella, 49 Myrtle. I just had a
Okay.
quick question. In regards to contracts that come your way. If there was a purchase and sales agreement, would it be coming from the school building committee or from the Board of Selectmen? Thank you.
I don't really know why that's pertinent. I don't think any contracts come to the Board of Finance, period, but that I could certainly look into that and get back to you at the next meeting or.
I believe that's one of those things where we move the, you sent to the Board of Finance for a town meeting, right?
You appropriate.
To appropriate.
So not our job. Anyone else? Okay, anyone else in the room? Just last call. Okay, that's good. And now I would like to ask for Michael Van de Venter to step forward and do a presentation for us on the 22 audit. Sure, however you want to do it.
All right, well, thank you very much. Again, my name is Mike Van Deventer, and I'm a partner in Mahoney Sable, ultimately responsible for overseeing the audit and issuing the reports on behalf of the firm. Joining me remotely is Heather Seatman. Heather is a supervisor at the firm and was ultimately responsible really for the day-to-day execution of our audit procedures. So happy to be here to communicate the results of the town's fiscal year 2022 audits. I did bring some reading material for you. There's a lot of information in these financial statements and single audit reports. I certainly encourage you as board members to review those. I am going to provide a summary overview of basically the scope of work that we performed, the results of the audit, and I'll make our required communications. So if you can turn your attention to the presentation. Slide 2, in terms of scope of work, we did perform an audit of the town's financial statements, and we performed that audit in accordance with both the auditing standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, as well as the government auditing standards issued by the Government Accountability Office. Also based on the level of funding that was received and expended by the town, we did also perform both federal and state single audits. The federal single audit is performed in accordance with the uniform administrative requirements, and the state single audit is performed in accordance with the OPM compliance supplement. In addition to those attest procedures, we do also perform an agreed upon procedures on the end of school year reports that are filed by the school district with the Department of Education.
Do you have the ability to share screen on this presentation or not?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't have it electronic.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
but I
and
can
this
certainly
is
send
a
it to
sort
you.
of condensed form, so we probably don't have an email with that per se.
With the actual presentation attached?
With these pages you're gonna go through with this.
No, but I
Okay,
will.
just wanted to
Yep, I can send it.
clarify.
So this wasn't what was sent in the email from you?
This-
No, that was the big one.
Those are the big ones.
Those were the big ones, I'm sorry. I
So I
didn't
can
have this
certainly
one.
provide an electronic copy for your reference.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
later.
In addition to those services, we do perform some non-audit services for the town. So we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, the schedule of federal awards, the schedule of state financial assistance, and the related notes. We also assist in converting the town's governmental fund financial statements to the government-wide financial statements. In order for us to be able to perform those services and remain independent of the town, management is required to take responsibility for those services. Ultimately, Donna, in her role, has accepted responsibility for those services.
Wow, broad shoulders. I can't see her right now.
So, in connection with the audit, we do issue a number of reports. The main report is the auditor's report on the financial statements. We did issue unmodified opinion on your financial statements. Again, an unmodified opinion is expressed when we've concluded that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America, and that is as established by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Again, I do like to point out that our opinion does provide reasonable assurance on the financial statements, that they're free from a material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. So again, we do not provide absolute assurance. We're not testing every transaction. There are estimates that are included in the financial statements, and therefore we cannot provide absolute assurance. In addition, we issue a report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting. In this report, we do not actually express an opinion on your compliance with laws and regulations or on the effectiveness of your internal controls. Essentially, during the course of performing our audit, if we became aware of or identified a material non-compliance with laws and regulations, or what we consider to be material weakness in your internal controls, we are required to include it in this report. And again, we did not report any such matters.
Can I just ask, have you ever had to do that for Wellington before in recent years, in the last decade, or?
I don't think we've had anything that has been reported in the report on compliance and internal controls.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
In connection with the federal single audit, we issued a report on compliance on your major federal programs. In this report, we do actually express an opinion on your compliance with those programs. For fiscal year 2022, the total federal awards expended by the town was about $924,000. The major programs were the Child Nutrition Cluster and the Coronavirus Relief Funds. We did issue an unmodified clean opinion on your compliance over those programs, and we did not report any internal control findings over compliance. In connection with the state single audit, we issue a similar report on your major state financial assistance program. For fiscal year 2022, the total state financial assistance that was received and expended by the town was approximately $4 million. The majority of that is your education cost sharing funds, which is exempt from our testing. The portion that was not was about $372,000. The major program was the Town Aid Road Grant Program. We did issue an unmodified clean opinion on your compliance over that program. And again, no internal control findings were noted. I'll pause here and just any questions as far as the audit reports that were issued or the scope of work. Next section goes over your financial highlights. And again, there's a lot of financial information that's included in the financial statements. Certainly, if we identified what we consider to be a financial issue, we would include it in these communications. The first slide goes over your general fund budgetary highlights. Again, your original and final budget for fiscal year 2022 planned for the use of fund balance of $1,055,230 to balance your revenues and expenditures. Your actual budgetary results was a decrease of $268,000. So that resulted in an overall favorable budgetary variance of about $787,000. That surplus was driven by revenues, which were about $587,000 more than budgeted, You did have favorable collection on property taxes, town clerk fees, conveyance taxes, and building permits. And then overall, your expenditures were about 199,000 less than budgeted. And again, we did not identify any instances of budgetary noncompliance in connection with our test. This next slide goes over your governmental fund financial statement highlights. So this includes your general fund on a GAAP basis, as well as all of your special revenue and capital project funds. The combined ending fund balances totaled approximately 7 million, which was an increase of about 100,000 from the prior year. Of the 7 million, the majority of that is in your general fund. The general fund was reporting an ending fund balance of about 4.2 million. That was a decrease of about 145,000 from the prior year. Of that amount, 2.5 million was considered unassigned, and that represents about 13.5% or just over 1.6 months of your fiscal year 2023 budgetary expenditure appropriations. In addition, that does not include the 490,000 that the town had assigned for use in the fiscal year 2023 budget. The capital project fund had an ending fund balance of 338,000, an increase of about 99,000 from the prior year. And then all of your other funds had an ending fund balance of about 2.4 million, an increase of about 145,000 from the prior year. And again, as listed out, the majority of those funds are held in your reserve for capital non-recurring. The small city grant fund, which primarily is in the form of loans receivable, again, not cash. And then about 478,000 in the fire and ambulance fund. And again, no deficit fund balances were noted. This last slide goes over your government-wide financial highlights. So again, this includes all of your governmental funds converted to a full accrual basis of accounting, similar to the way that a corporation would perform its accounting. It includes all of your capital assets as well as all of the related debt. The focus on the government-wide financial statements from a user perspective is really on your long-term liabilities. Overall, the town is reporting a positive unrestricted net position of about 4.7 million as of year end. That's really attributed to the low levels of long-term bonded debt, as well as the status of the town's pension and OPEB liabilities. That contributes to your overall positive net position. A lot of municipalities do report a deficit in their unrestricted net position, which is primarily due to unfunded deficits in their pension and OPEB funds. In terms of your long-term liabilities, the town does have a net pension liability that totaled about 127,000 as of year end, which was an increase of about 98,000 from the prior year. That plan is considered well funded at 80%, and that's utilizing a discount rate of 7%. In terms of your other post-employment benefit plan, again, that reflects retiree healthcare benefits for eligible employees of the school district, and that is currently funded on a pay-as-you-go basis. The actuarial determined liability for those benefits totaled about 1.5 million as of year end, which was a decrease of about 698,000 from the prior year, and that's utilizing a discount rate of 3.5%. Again, the discount rate on the OPEB plan is much lower than the pension plan because you do not have a trust that you're funding those OPEB benefits through.
All right. I'm gonna feel my ignorance. What's the discount rate and how does it figure into this whole equation?
So the discount rate is ultimately the actuaries will determine what your total pension liability is, right?
Mhm.
And that liability is going to be paid out over a period of time. So what they do is they discount that to today's dollars.
All right.
And if you have a trust, then typically what your long-term investment rate of return will be kind of set at your discount rate. So again,
That's the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
good question.
So that the 80% is considered well-funded, but we have a correction. I mean, we have a line in our budget, in our next fiscal year budget that's on the table that has an increase showing it needs to be more deeply funded.
Mhm.
Generally, 80 is pretty,
Yeah, I mean,
why does it sound low to me?
yeah, 80% is considered a well-funded plan.
Okay,
Again, the actuaries will take into consideration basically the fluctuations in the market, as well as any changes in estimates. And ultimately, they provide you with an annual required contribution. So again, although you would like a 100% funded plan, it doesn't need to be 100% funded today. You will continue to make contributions to it over the period of time that the employees work. So ultimately, the assets that are accumulated will be sufficient to pay the benefits.
Thank you.
How does this compare to what the state of Connecticut has for their pension liability?
Not even close. So I think
What's
they're,
their-
Which is what?
yeah, I think they're probably around like 40% now.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are very big dollars.
Mhm.
All right, this last section goes over our required communications. Again, these communications are really geared towards when the auditor experiences issues in connection with the audit. We have certain requirements to communicate those issues to you. So again, these communications will be somewhat brief. The first item here talks about our responsibility under the auditing standards. Although we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, they are the responsibility of management. It's our responsibility to perform our audit procedures and express our opinion on those financial statements. So again, all the information that's included in the financial statements did come from the town. In terms of the plan, scope, and timing of the audit, again, no changes in the overall scope of work that was originally agreed upon. There was a delay in completing the audit. Those delays were really driven by certain reconciliations that were needed to complete the government-wide financial statements, and then certain information to complete the statistical section. As a result, 2 extensions were obtained from the Connecticut Office of Policy and Management. The only thing I'll make mention of is, again, over half of the municipalities in the state of Connecticut were on extension this year. In fact, there was more on extension this year than last year. So again, I think it's partially due to, I think, an increase in workload within the municipalities as far as grants, reporting, as well as issues in the accounting profession from a capacity perspective to service those municipalities. So again, we still have a number of municipalities that are still on extension. So again, all financial statements were filed by the end of February.
As fallout from the pandemic or?
Yeah,
That's
just there's a
less.
lot of, I think additional grant reporting. John could probably speak to some of the stuff, but ultimately it's not unusual for us to see some delays in the report.
Okay.
In terms of significant audit findings, again, we do review the town's accounting policies and practices. Usually under here, we'll point out any new implementation of new accounting standards that impact your financial statements. The town did implement GASB statement number 87 on leases. That impact was determined to be immaterial to your financial statements. However, again, future leases will need to be analyzed and accounted for in accordance with that statement. In terms of significant estimates and judgments, those do consist of estimated useful lives that are assigned to your capital assets, as well as discount rates that are utilized to determine your net pension and OPEB liabilities. Again, both of those estimates impact amounts that are reported in your government-wide financial statements. We did review those estimates and we did deem them to be reasonable and consistent with what other municipalities are utilizing. Happy to report that we had no significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There was one uncorrected misstatement, and that was identified by management just prior to us finalizing the financial statements. It was an overstatement of unearned revenues and an understatement of revenues in the amount of $10,000 in the Human Services Fund. Again, we deem that to be immaterial to the basic financial statements. So that adjustment is not reflected in these financial statements. There were no disagreements with management. We did obtain a management representation letter. There were no unusual representations requested by us from management. So again, I always just give the example, if we were testing a transaction and we were unable to substantiate it, and we were relying on the representation of management, that would be a unique representation that we would inform you of. And we were not aware of any consultations by management with any other independent accountants. So again, that concludes the communications. I will open it up to any additional questions.
Anyone on the board table here, do you have any questions? There's something that I saw when I was going through the draft of the report, and it was a sort of trending, a 10-year trend of the portion of our debt limit that we're at. And it showed 10 years ago, we were at 4% of using our debt limit. And now we're down, for the last 3 years, we're down to 1%. I'm just wondering, in your professional eyes on that, what do you tell towns that are at that level of pretty much flat debt limit?
So, I mean, typically, towns will establish debt policies that typically will try not to exceed 10%. So again, I think you have a lot of, capacity for borrowing, but obviously that borrowing does have an impact on your taxes.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions at all? Anyone, Jim Gilligan, do you have any questions?
No, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks very much for coming in. Oh, Dave,
So the 10%, what, can you tell us exactly like which numbers we're talking about 10% of? Is it
That's a good point. So I was talking about 10% of the budget.
right, so 10% of our operating budget?
Correct.
And for debt service?
For
you would
debt
say
service, as
should
far
it
as
be
the
more than
debt,
10%?
the debt limitations,
Mhm.
I'm not sure that, I could probably speak to what the average is. Certainly, there's some municipalities that have a lot more debt. But again, I don't know specifically in terms of what a kind of an average percentage of the debt limitation is outstanding.
Mhm. Okay. Good to know.
okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.
No problem. Thank you.
And you can stay for the fun, or, just
Please.
flip out. No one will judge you harshly in any way.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Okay, a little light reading for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Donna, I'm gonna give you a minute. Do you think it's a good idea now to set up with the share screen or not for go into deliberations, or should we start without doing that for a while? I don't know. That would,
You could set up your shared screen for the appropriation worksheet, and then, is that what you mean? And then you see what you have for requests?
sort of a guide, yeah,
guide.
just a guide to refer to that would
Yes.
be something everybody sees. Let's see. But I think just kind of as an overview here, as you all can see in the budget year itself with the fund balance we have, and the fact that the school budgets, which both Region 19 and the K-8 represent 2/3 of our overall spending, and they're in an unusual, they have unusual budgets this year, requests this year, while Region 19 is a fixed number, they're in the negative, is at 1.6%. And the and K-8 is only going up 0.85 of 1%. So it's unusual for school budgets anywhere to have those that kind of year. So that takes the pressure off, that being the 2/3 driver of the overall budget, it takes the pressure off the rest of the budget. But the general just want to get the terminology right. The general spending is the government, the spending other than the school budget part is up 10.3% year over year. Although I think that might have been tailored back some. So it's, so it could look as if we really could kind of just sign off because of the, monetarily, except it's a year where we can think about the future more. Because we know one way or the other, whatever happens at the referendum, we've either got a large school project, or we have for the K through 8, or we have a lot of repairs that have been delayed, or just part of doing business with a 70-year-old and 100-year-old school. So that makes us sort of think about a completely different backdrop, which is what you would do on a micro budget in your own household, and that is set some money aside, save some money, lock something up a little bit in advance, because you're preparing for something bigger that's going to have impact in like 3 or 4 years in, or whatever it is right at the outset, if you're spending money on repairs and stuff to a large degree. But it's also kind of necessary for us when we're facing 20-something% increases in a budget, to look at what the contract with the taxpayer is for us as a Board of Finance, and what smart budget planning is. So that's something that's uppermost in our minds. I mean, a lot of people would say, hey, we're having this great year, but it's just an unusual year, is what it is. It does, all the cards fall in place for us to just kind of take the easy way out. But I don't know that, I personally don't think that's the way to go. And I would love to hear what the board's ideas of that are. Document for best way to illustrate that is either the 5-year look back, where you can see patterns of year-over-year growth, or I don't know if you want to put that up, Sam, if you can. And then also the budget calculator. Maybe the 5-year thing is the better. I think the 5-year thing is a good thing to go through to start talking about what we're thinking about in terms of where we might, instead of having an overall 3.4% increase in spending, given that the schools are so flat or under, we're thinking of taking that percentage down, or that cutting the budget would make a difference there, that we should look at, because it's a significant amount of spending, on a $19 million budget. So, and like I said, it's softened because of the schools coming in so low. So, would anyone like to dive in, or do you?
Sure. So to recap, if we did nothing, right, and we just accepted these budgets as they are, because of a couple things falling in our favor, more than a couple, we would have a tax cut this year of 0.12%. It would go down to 31.15. But
I thought
we were at.
We're at 3127 and we go down to 3115, so it's,
It's
you
a
know,
point.
0.12. Yeah.
All right.
So it's minimal.
So while that sounds awesome, some of these numbers, when you look at them like this, are very concerning because they're showing, we have some really big percentage increases and we have some consecutive year big increases. And that's unsustainable in and of itself. And it's all the things we've been talking about all along. But I just don't think that we should say, okay, this is great. We're good. Because I just don't think we are. I don't know.
I gotta say, I agree with that
Yeah.
mindset generally. I mean, I look at 5-year increases of 40% and it seems like we're trending wrong. You know, we're trending incautiously. And just because we have a good year, this could really, this could hurt us in general, and it can continue to, but.
So there is, I mean, I don't know if there are a couple of things that we can put on the table. I mean, that Erica's offered to delay the Novus project at the, the one-time, computer infrastructure adjustment for the senior center. And that's 16,100 in the town office building operations. So that's something that could end up on.
Can I speak to that stuff?
Yeah, sure.
So, it's certainly an increase. It's an increase that I believe is necessary, but it would be a cut that wouldn't affect anything we have in place. It wouldn't affect a service to a
Services.
senior,
Yeah,
and it wouldn't affect a service to any resident. And so while I think it's important, I understand that we probably can't have everything we think that we need. And this is a one-time cost that would then be absorbed within the Novus contract that we currently have, but it is an additional $16,000. It does include new hardware at the senior center and then bringing them on board. So would I like to see it done? Yes, I think it should be done there. And at the library has seen the number from Novus, they requested that. But if that particular cut wouldn't affect any services that anyone's receiving now.
and what is and they would also have ongoing operating impact, right? If from their upgrade.
I don't think any more than they already do, right? They certainly have computers there in the center now that need to be replaced on a regular basis. This wouldn't change that. And so they wouldn't see a real impact, any different impact. It would be bringing them into the managed services portion of our IT contract. And that's all it would do, but the initial outlay of the project and most of that project increase is in time. It is in time from Novus, outside of their typical service hours.
What would that net be for the library if they were to do it? The same thing, do you
I
remember
can look it up.
about?
I don't have that offhand, but I can get it for you.
I mean, it's not in the budget, so it's not pertinent to
Correct. And it wasn't
what we're
the
doing
library's
now. I was
budget.
just curious
It was
about
considerably more.
a CIP, kind of.
Yeah,
lumped
it was
together.
more stuff, and it would include an additional contract for managed support. It was not something that Novus felt that they could absorb into their current service.
Gotcha.
So it would be a significant increase at the library.
Okay.
And while I think they're beneficial, again, I understand
Okay.
the increases we've asked for.
I just want to remind you guys too, that we are, we're not voting on anything tonight. So any of these cuts would be something that would be finalized until next week. But I guess what I wouldn't mind is a little more verbalizing how people feel about the ideas. So we're not like starting flat-footed next week. At least, if you hate it or love it, or you're on the fence, let me know, or feel free to speak out and share with your neighbors. Okay, So also, while we're on the senior center, they're asking for, you know, a doubling of their maintenance budget, which does kind of drive theirs up to be, you know, their budget increase overall. And that other one is from the town office building, the computer thing. So their budget request is 26% or 25.9 specifically. So thinking that we should at least take that request for 7,500 down, or I'm sorry, it's 15,000 in the total line, take it down to 12,500. So that the request for increase would go from, instead of 7,500, 5,000. Too much, okay, too little.
It was for a specific one-time project, wasn't it? They had.
No, that's the computer thing. Well, yeah, no, they have some built up repairs to do, but they do have some sort of, you know, not a lot, and I don't really want to feel like they have to hit it up hard, but they have some off budget backup if they get into a problem where they've got to do a repair and the money is the increased money. I mean, they're still getting 500, but extra.
I mean, they had a significant number of
5,000.
identified
Yeah.
projects. And Steph, when you and I spoke about them, they're not projects that are large enough that they qualify for CIP. They were all well under $10,000.
Okay,
We worked with them to seek out some quotes on those so we could have a real idea of what it is. Just for instance, one repair they had this year was $4,800. And that was just one thing that, you know, had to be repaired and a need. So half of their current maintenance budget for the senior center is covered under annual maintenance costs, whether it be the fire alarm system, there's inspections that have to be done, the kitchen inspections that have to be done, the fire extinguisher, those sorts of things on their overall systems. That takes up half of their maintenance budget, which leaves them, you know, well under $5,000 to do any kind of repairs in the Livingston Senior Center.
Line 185.
Yeah.
That's mine.
And in the increase, you know, we felt was justified with the list of items they had that needed repair. And we actually worked with them to whittle some of that down to things that could be done with funds they currently had or with assistance from Public Works that may not lead to an additional cost.
so that would, yeah, so I guess it was that some of these numbers have been, Donna, maybe you can speak to that, you know, because the original increase that we were working off is 25.9%, but now they're down to 24.7.
Yes, they are.
So is this, but this idea would be on top of that.
Yes, it would be on top of that.
Right, okay. So if we took it down 2,500, you would see that difference. Okay. This is not one of, this is a tricky one, just to explain to people. I mean, you guys understand, I think, but Parks and Rec in fiscal year 22, which is what we're working off as budgeters as the last full year. They underspent their transfer out amount by $50,000. So they have, some of that's earmarked, some of it's Lions Club, targeted for scoreboard at the ball fields behind us and other things. I mean, they have plenty of things that need repairs, like the swimming rope at Hall Pond and things like that. It's gone now or it's been taken down because it's raggedy. But it's also a big fund balance, and I don't. So I'm thinking it makes sense to not to do the whole thing, because that will create a budget problem in subsequent years, I think. But take it down like 10,000 of that, because they have 36,000 that's in a miscellaneous category that for various projects and repairs. But I'm also mindful of the fact that they got, you know, a $200,000 ARPA project that is addressing major drainage problems down there on the River Road fields and lighting. And I think sometimes you have to look at budgeting in the sense of what are the steps ahead? And yes, that's federal government money, but I'm not really putting them in separate pots when I'm thinking about department by department. So I don't know how you guys philosophize your cuts or, you know, explain them, but that's one of the things that was in my mind. So that's not knocking out the whole amount. Now they are flat on their programming. We pretty much finance the landscape part of what they do and the administration, the cost of the director and that payroll, you know, and but I think something like this, it's modest, it's not gonna, you know, it's the kind of thing, if they're up and running and they're recharging all these programs that have kind of fallen off a little, and you know, their revenues will show up. But if they came back and said, we need seed money for this or that, I don't think there's anyone here who wouldn't, you know, wouldn't be open-minded about that. So, you know, if there's a correction to this in the next budget year or something like that for a legitimate reason, then I don't see why we couldn't handle it at that point rather than try to protect a fund, an unspent amount in the amount they got in 22. So any thoughts on that idea?
I had the same thought, I just came to it a little differently, because it looks to me like the fund balance has grown not because of revenues earned from programming, just because it wasn't spent. And for that reason, it's tax dollars that have just gone into that pot. So I think it'd be appropriate to take some of it back for now.
And what are you thinking of it as a number?
And Joe is on Zoom. Did he want to talk?
Oh,
He
yeah.
has his hand up.
Oh, he had his hand up.
Joe?
Is it okay to make a comment? Oh, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear us?
So, yeah, my volume was down. So, our rec director just left, so that means our department has no rec director. He asked for a 4% increase in his budget for landscaping and probably the electricity that we're going to be spending with new lights at the park. And I wasn't aware that you guys are going to take $10,000 out of our fund balance. I'm very surprised. I understand what you're saying, and I heard that if we have a problem, we could ask for the money back, which once the money's gone, I realize that's probably impossible to get back. I'm just surprised that you guys adjusted the budget without asking anybody or talking to anybody on the commission about that.
Well, first of all, we're not adjusting the budget. We're throwing ideas out. And a lot of people are here to hear, you know, to comment and to talk about it. And the boards, this is the first night we've been in deliberating. We've been all in budget presentations up to now. So we've kind of heard what's what with the presentations, and we've done a little follow-up. The part of the thinking too is, aren't some of these programs likely to get, you know, obviously we have to do hiring and we have to do something in the interim. And I know you guys have your hand, I know Erica has her hands full with that. correct me if I'm wrong, but we're kind of leading into a season that, I mean, Talon County's in the green zone again as far as, COVID goes, and it just feels like there's a little bit of opening up, and that maybe your revenues are gonna be up quite a bit from people being re-energized to enter the fields of play again. So that's part of the thinking too.
I'm not so sure that that's true. I think a large part of the reason that the part of the budget that we raise through programs is probably up because there was some ARPA money infused. That
Yeah.
summer camp probably made some money, and ARPA money got infused into that. We try and keep that budget reasonable, use it for unknown things, like the water system is not working at River Road. There's a lot of things we need at River Road. There was a machine that Alan wanted to buy that's probably $5,000 to do the infield grass. There's a litany of things that we needed that money for. And I'm just surprised to see on this spreadsheet that $10,000 was pulled out of that.
Well, it
Because
hasn't
It hasn't been
It's
pulled
not pulled
out.
out.
Well, it shows it as a line item like that.
been. Where?
You got that in there?
On
Where
the,
are you?
on this spreadsheet that you guys are showing, the 5-year spreadsheet.
If I look back, is there something?
It shows us as a negative 1.5
1.9.
budget
1.9.
increase for the year.
Oh, well, Alan made that cut. That was taking for his budget down before when that was, and I can't remember what he earmarked that for, but he worked it and brought it down to that. That was Alan's cut.
Alan told us that he was about 4%. He was adding about 4,000 plus or minus. And now you guys show a negative number there.
I think he made some changes in the payroll taxes and then.
Can you just scroll down and show that?
Yeah, but
that was
Eric
his
is
original.
talking
Yeah,
about
so
it.
Joe, the original budget that he presented compared to what you're seeing now, there were some adjustments made in the electricity. Alan had utilized some estimates that weren't accurate to the town's electricity costs. So that was reworked. And then some adjustments in the payrolls that actually brought the overall budget down to a negative number. So while it was initially an increase, the current budget as it sits is not.
Can you just highlight that 5-year look back and show our line item? The 5-year look back, the tab on the left?
Yeah, and it shows a 1.9 to the negative, right? It does.
Can you just show that to everybody?
Sure, yeah,
Just
she's
bring-
working on it.
But that 1.9, that's this year, right? No,
Right,
not
that's this
over
year's
5 years.
number. Last year it went
Went
up
down
15.5%.
Yeah,
The year before that, it went up 21%.
It's up 32 over 5 years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
so you show a minus 1.9%,
Yes, but
which is $10,000 taken out of our fund balance, I believe.
No,
No.
it's not.
That's the current budget.
That's the budget that was submitted.
Can I interject?
Jenny,
Jenny Arpin, Human Services. So Alan and I had to move around the way that summer camp and the ARPA infusion was put on the budget. We had initially submitted it as being an expenditure, and then we chose to do it as revenue, if I'm remembering properly. We switched the sides, so that's probably where that money is coming from, and that's what led to the Parks and Rec budget being in the negative. It wasn't from the fund balance.
and they both filed those revisions.
Yes. So,
Thank you, Jenny.
so Joe, we're not really talking about cutting any expenditures. What we're talking about is just using some fund balance to offset the,
Ask for
The
the
ask.
town,
yeah,
as you said.
yeah. Does that make sense?
You're talking about money that's raised by programs within Parks and Rec.
Yes, but that's the thing, that money wasn't raised by programs the last few years. The budget's gone unspent and it's been building up. So if we keep perpetuating that, it's gonna keep growing on its own without the programs contributing to it. That's the trend that's been happening since COVID.
So the money that's being removed is not from Parks and Rec's program raised money, like summer school and those kind of things, summer camp. Where's that money being pulled from? Our regular budget within the town?
Your fund balance is at $50,000 right now.
And where does the fund balance come from? That's not money that the town gives to Parks and Rec, is it? It's
So
some
what-
unused money that the town gives.
So Joe, what happens is if we go ahead with it right now, how it is, your ask is for $94,000. If you only spend $70,000 next year, that $25,000 stays in your fund balance. And that has grown to $50,000 over the last couple of years because it's gone unspent. And so that's what we're saying, is to just use 10,000 of that, which is only a fraction of what is actually accumulated from being underspent.
So part of it is, and this is the nature of budgeting. We do not budget off of the actuals of a department. So if you're not the only one that has this scenario. If you budget 300,000 and you spend 200,000, 100,000 is in your fund budget. But what you get for your beginning point for the next year is the 300,000, if that's what was budgeted. Doesn't pick up the actual. Am I correct on that, Donna? No. That's, our budgeting is the beginning figure we use is the original budget figure from the year before, not the original actual. So if you underspend that year, it doesn't mean, it's not gonna affect your budget. You press reset, go back to what you requested. If for like a few years or even 1 year, you underspend that to a large degree, that's taxpayer money that's kind of, that was unspent, that's sort of in a holding queue or savings account, or however you want to look at it. And it's not good budgeting on our end. Jenny?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to once again interject and indicate, I'm not sure if Joe had mentioned it because I've been out of the room. However, the fund balance, there were several projects, and I'm sure this had been discussed at previous meetings that you may recall. The fund balance had several projects that that Parks and Rec had wanted to use this money in order to do, and these were maintenance projects that would benefit the town and the taxpayers. And also, I thought it was worth mentioning that it's not necessarily as a result that the department was not run properly, that there's this fund balance. There was a global pandemic. People were not participating in programs. Programs were not running. And I'd like you all to please try and hold that in your mind.
I think we all understand that.
That's actually the point I'm trying to make, Jenny, is that was happening. The programs weren't running, not through anybody's fault, they just weren't, but we actually paid into it anyway. So we're just trying to.
Yeah, because the way that budget's set up is the revenue and the participation offsets the expense up front beyond.
Right, and I understand that, but years ago, $10,000 was taken from my department's fund balance, and my department has struggled ever since. Don't do this to Parks and Rec.
Thank you. Any other comments about this?
I agree with that, as much as it's an awkward timing to say it, but, yeah, for all of the reasons Christina mentioned.
You?
I'm gonna remove Christina too.
What is
Okay.
happening here?
I know, what are they, nuts?
The other thing I would say is the projects that were mentioned during the budget presentation for being used, the fund balance for, those are things that should probably be in the CIP plan and aren't. It was the first time we'd ever heard of them. But those are exactly the kinds of projects that should be in CIP that we should be planning ahead for. And there's other money for those things. So that's all.
That's true.
They
And
also seem pretty ill defined.
we didn't have quotes. on
Yeah, I mean,
that,
they were
yeah.
just like things listed off the top of someone's head, it sounded like.
Okay. Thank you for everyone's comments on that.
No,
Yeah,
Okay, that's, thank you. I didn't have that information up until
it's,
about
like
5
breaking
minutes
news.
ago.
yeah.
What, 5 minutes?
So you have an idea for an interim person? Or are you just gonna bid?
We're working on that. I mean, this happened without warning suddenly. So, certainly working with the Parks and Rec Commission in doing that. We do have an assistant just here 10 hours a week. He's willing to do some additional work while we find an interim. So first goal, find someone in the interim while we work to replace that position.
Okay, thank you for the update. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else want to put anything on the table?
You want to talk about library? Fred?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's where I would go if I was going.
I do have some thoughts about that. I mean, I have a question. Is Karen Ann or, one of the, is there anyone from the library online? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Hi. Oh, I didn't even see you guys. Hi, Joan. Okay, just wanted to ask about the line item in the budget. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to. Sure, we're gonna go to the library. It's for 18,000 for assistant, I think it's assistant 2. Is that, can you describe what that position does?
So that is the programming position, so that is the person that would be creating and facilitating all the programming. It's a position that we used to have and have not had the last couple of years, so the library's trying to get back a programmer.
Okay. You guys also, and spoken to Karen Ann about this, you all have a $25,000 fund balance from 2022, plus you have some revenue that's come in, and a lot of that's grant revenue. You have like 20,000 this year in grant revenue. That, of course, is targeted. So no one's talking about coming after that or anything. But you got something for me?
Joan,
I got papers for it.
Joan, just pass them this way. I don't want to see you knock any of that over or hurt yourself.
So Joan has broken it down
Six of these you may have
where
to
that
share them.
money has been earmarked for. Over half of that has already actually been spent out from just things, supply chain issues, everything that happened last year. So half of that money has actually been applied to that fiscal year. And then she's got where the last of that money that's not been spent out has been where that came from.
So that spending you're talking about was spent in fiscal year 23.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
For that.
Right. But from what I understand, because you guys did send us some information, we asked for it, and I should say, we were very appreciative of how detailed it was. And, the information that you gave us about your off-budget accounts and from when the library was constructed and after that. So, I really appreciate that effort. That is one thing, though, that I recall was a part of the discussion when you all decided to structure with 2 co-directors, knowing that would be expensive, more expensive than a single director. And what was said at the time was that the work of the programmer would be absorbed by the 2 co-directors. So now we're kind of talking about a separate and distinct position, and I can understand in planning why that would be beneficial, but the train's already kind of left the station, and something that used to be in the low 50s as a salary is now divided among two people with, and it totals more like 86 in this budget request plus benefits. So it's a completely different picture, and that's a big part of your budget growth. So that's why, I mean, your increase, your request is, someone remind me, 22.9 or what is it? I'm sorry.
That's all
Close.
sorry, the payroll.
Payroll, yeah. And so I guess, you know, what I'm thinking, or when I see that, what I'm thinking is you've got like a lot of payroll increase, but it's not, if there was something like the library's expanded its hours to some Sunday hours, or a longer day on Saturday, or longer in the evening, or earlier in the morning, whatever. If you were expanding hours, it would be understandable. But if it's sort of, and I understand that you're trying something here with co-directors, but a lot of people kind of question on a small staff, how two people at the top is going to benefit everything that the library needs to do. So, and in fact, the money that you have that's in actual spending is, I think, because one of the co-directors did the work, but wanted to be compensated for it, and the board agreed. So, and even though salaried people just generally have to take it on the chin when there's extra work, that's part of the deal of being salaried. You get promoted, you know, and it's so that's to me, that's the big issue in your budget. And I don't know if other people want to weigh in on that, or if you want to respond.
I just want to speak just real quick on
Okay.
the compensation for the programming done over the summer. I believe in the Board of Finance minutes for the February 2nd meeting, it actually it listed incorrectly how much that employee was compensated by 10 grand. The employee was compensated about 3 grand, not 13 grand as the minutes show. So I want to quickly just correct that. And I hear what you're saying about co-directors and programming positions. That decision predates me, so I cannot speak to what was said at that time. But then the other part of the payroll increase was an additional clerk, which is, I think, well justified, because at this time, only 2 employees at a time are working at the library, and that's just not enough to even have a presence around the library. We've been having theft issues across the library lately, and we need people to be able to leave the front desk and walk around. So we've got to have more than 2 people at a time.
So that's, what do you have? One of the, are both the directors there?
One director, I'm not exactly sure how that is staggered, but the 2 directors are not there at the same time.
They're in the middle of the day together. Okay, and then generally, like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where things are a little bit different. Okay, you'll have Debbie there, and then Hope comes in. That's most days, and then on Tuesday and Thursday, I think it's reversed. Debbie has more hours off in the morning. So because we have the extended hours twice a week. But the directorship is probably, for the salaries, is not more expensive than having a director and an assistant director. And this was established, and I thought I had the bill here. You know, I have the record someplace of the motion where this was decided. So the 2 salaries were added together for the director and the assistant, and then divided in 2. And so Hope took a hit on it, and Debbie got a little bit of an increase. nothing really dramatic. Now with the insurance being offered, that does up that cost a little bit. Okay, so that's one of the issues. And the other issue is that you must have at least 2 people in the building at any time. That's a safety measure.
What are the two, what are the days, you know, like that, I mean, are they full-time? The two co-directors?
Co-directors,
Yes, everybody else is part-time.
full-time being 35 hours.
Okay,
Okay, so that's how it was divided. And I guess we're at a point now where things are moving along. The books are getting bought, the public is coming in more and more. We've been keeping records of how many people a day for a couple of years now. Before that, it wasn't kept, so we don't have real old stuff. We know that that's happening. The budget is working. It's being paid attention to every month. Rebecca looks at, are we on target for the budget? Things like that. So I'm at the point of saying, if it ain't close, we shouldn't fix it now. That's not to say that we won't say something different in a couple of years.
The thing is, it's part of it's the history. I mean, you know, the overall target of a budget percentage is definitely not 22.8, and it's not 7.5, which was last year, and modest by the library standards in the last several years. But the year before that, it was 18%, and we thought we were doing something like out of whack, almost not out of whack, but we were making a big statement that year and doing that.
Yeah.
But that's not something that's status quo. So, like, I guess even talking about some of this stuff, I'm not really understanding why this big of an influx in payroll increase isn't necessary.
Went to a director and an assistant director. We're probably looking at over $100,000.
He's doing a confirmer and a clerk.
We still do. But what I'm saying is that having the 2 directors is actually saving money over a director and assistant. You're not gonna get a director here for under $65,000. The average income for the median is 58,000. You've got to find somebody that's going to come out to Wellington, and you're gonna pay them enough money that they're gonna stay longer than 6 months or a year. Because it takes at least 2 years to really get a job up and running in most positions,
Right.
any job.
I'm hearing some other comments with.
With all due respect, man, we have 2 of those people right now that are working for less than $58,000 a year.
Pardon?
We have 2 of those people right now working for under $58,000 a year.
To what people?
We have 2 directors.
The co-directors, yes,
Correct.
they're not at full price. Do you know what I mean? If we went to something else,
Right.
we would have to up
So if-
each one of those salaries.
If we upped one of them by $15,000, we still save, on the top of my head, $26,000.
Yes, we actually have been
Which
considering
would
that.
fund the
at
other
our
positions.
meeting. And I think there are personnel issues involved here, that, I don't know that would be possible, is my point.
If we offered a raise to one of the 2,
Yeah.
stronger of the 2, I'm sure they would take it. And the other monies could be spent for the other
I
personnel
wouldn't be
that's
so sure.
necessary.
I'm sorry.
It would be my position, not another.
Pete,
person.
did you have something that? you-
Yeah, I don't remember us going from a director and assistant director to 2 co-directors. We went from a director and a program director to 2
No, we
co.
had an assistant director. We had, and it wasn't for very long before Clay left. But we did have a director, an assistant director, and a programmer.
And the assistant director was full-time also?
Do you remember what year that was?
Hired full-time.
So is that the?
So, but it wasn't
That
for
was
a very
18%.
long time.
That was just
in the 18
a very short period of time. that
My
they were
understanding is
assistant.
she was
Okay,
in
now,
charge.
if you remember that system of having a director without an assistant didn't work very well, did it? How long did they stay? And how much did they?
Well, it's
improve?
possible that it's not, I mean, we're getting down in the weeds about deciding, structural stuff and assistant, what job titles are, but, a support person is one thing, for a director, or for running the library, or, working some desk hours and assisting the director. An assistant director is sort of like, do you need a president and a VP and then a nation of 7 part-timers or whatever it is? You know what, I don't mean to be flippant, but it's like, that's very top heavy. And I don't think the library had a co-director that was, I'm sorry, an assistant director that was sort of like, a stand-in for the director fully. It feels like you took hours away from program attention in the restructuring. And it's had a heavy impact on the budget.
Yeah, so it's trying to put in a program or
And
something.
less hours, yeah, because we're asking for less hours with the programmer than it has been previously.
So that has been cut back. Now, only the 2 directors are salaried. Okay, and the others work by hour. But I want to correct one misconception. Salary does not mean that you don't get overtime in extenuating circumstances. I've worked 2 jobs so far where I was salaried and I also got overtime when there was something extra that had to be done. It wasn't that I got it every day or every week. And so it is a misconception that in every case, salary is that amount. only.
No, but I think it's that your plan should not be contingent upon that
No,
idea.
You're right.
And that's how it's operating now.
It has to
So,
be something really
Yeah,
unusual
right.
in order.
We recognize that's a problem, and that's what we're trying to correct.
Okay. Other comments from the board?
I mean, my comment is just, if you look at the 5 years, that budget in particular has gone up $100,000 in 5 years. And
37%.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just,
That is the rate of inflation. I went back and calculated.
37%.
No,
Yeah,
No,
it
the
has,
state will tell you
it
it's
has.
6.8.
When you go back and you look at the basics, et cetera, it has. It's unfortunate. A lot of things have doubled in price that we have to use, which is really unfortunate.
It is possible while you're doing this reorganization or you're having some, because I feel like this is the year that you're really trying to get money in there for this assistant idea, this program director idea, restoring what we had before in a sense. But, and so that's why it feels to us like we're making an expansion decision, not a status quo decision. Because, if you look at the budget increases, we made an expansion decision 2 years ago when we raised it 18%. And I don't know, Joan, I'm not sure that, I'm not sure in fiscal year 20, and this is only fiscal year 24, we moving from that one over to the next year. So it's really a 4-year history. I mean, it was at 190 and now we're talking 297. That's $100,000. That's just a big ask.
Yes.
So I think we've heard each other, we've really discussed it, and I don't know if there's,
Just over the last 3 years, I mean, the building costs are, haven't jumped as much as, that percentage. The programs, relatively flat. So it's really just personnel.
I mean, and anything that we decide to cut out of the request, we're talking about the area that we see you've put the money in, but I mean, you have like repairs and things like that that you may have earmarked money for in your reserves that you could address that stuff and move it elsewhere and do what you want to do. We're just saying, given how the budget request has come in, what you're presenting, it's not making sense as far as that big of a increase.
Staff Debbie's online. Yeah, I see that. It doesn't matter.
Who is that?
Debbie was raising her hand.
Debbie,
Debbie Linares.
oh, Deb Linares. Deb, you want to say something? Is there anyone else? I can't see the hands at all. Where are they?
It's not there anymore, but it was on the bottom. It was
She's
like a-
still up on my screen.
Oh, she's
she's
on
on
your
mute.
screen, okay. Well, we can come back to it. Anything else that you want to say or that anyone here does?
I think when we first talked about the library, they were projecting potentially 20,000 in anticipated revenue as well, which I'm still not, we're not capturing. Or it's still not being reflected in this latest.
Yeah, that's another piece of it. Your revenues, which is a good thing, your revenues are up this year. So far, you're like at, what's the number? 36,000. 20 of that is like I said, a grant.
Yeah. I think that's-
But
So that's
it's-
like 15,000 of it.
But you're at the, I mean, there's several months left and the year before you were at 14.5 in revenue and none of that was projected. Like, we're not projecting any revenue in the bottom right-hand corner to make it easy for the budgeter. And so that can offset some of that increase too.
It's hard to predict revenue because it's business stuff and how many people buy books and everything. But the board has okayed to take some of the money that we have and put it into a high interest. What do I want to say, a CD. So there's, trying to look at what monies we have. I'm trying to earn some money on. That's,
I understand some of that has to go in the kitty though. You guys have several accounts like that.
Correct.
So you're doing that, and maybe I don't know if you have an overarching financial planner over all those accounts, but it just feels like some of this is some of this is part of the money that the town has turned over, like the fact that we're kind of coming after the 25,000 fund balance idea is something, it's been a pattern before your time even. So you know what I mean? That's part of why those accounts are there off budget. And if they're, invested, they're earning interest and stuff like that, as they are, because the interest is showing up. But so we're kind of talking about something that maybe has not been done over years.
could be. We do know that the overcost could help with some of the repairs possibly that we did not get through ARPA, we had applied for. And so, there may be some of that. A lot of it though is going to be, is getting absorbed by some of the bills that are overrun now because of the increases in prices of gas and electricity and, those essential things, not the fun things.
Right.
Yeah, propane, yes. So,
Right, all those fun things.
yeah, so it isn't like we have that 25,000 hanging around doing nothing. No, that most of it is already been spent. It was spent for things it was budgeted for.
She's talking about the revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about the
Revenues,
okay,
we can't.
thanks. We have some other thoughts to get to, and I'm glad you guys came in. Thank you very much for that. Anything else? Okay,
On library or in general?
in general, of course, I know there might be something else. would you like to weigh in on something?
Recently suggested that we put in, I believe, $15,000 in the contingency.
We
for
did.
the-
We put it on in the.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need to put a lot more money into contingency. I'd like to talk about Wellington Fire Department one. Chief?
Yep.
Do we have any idea about mold remediation?
No.
We put 200 grand in there, would that start us?
I have no idea.
I'm just taking a stab at the dark, in the dark with.
Somebody fill us in first.
So.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, back up. But,
Do you mind if I?
no, go ahead, Alex.
I set you up for this, knock it out of the park.
Yeah. Excuse me. So what Pete is alluding to with the contingency, trying to figure out, we've had an issue with the station the last few weeks that there was a really odd odor that's just progressively been getting worse. We had to have service masters come in, do an air quality test. That was done last Friday, Friday. When they did the test last week, they did do 2 pilot holes into 2 walls and found an extensive amount of mold, which has caused it. The problem right now is they still don't know where it's coming from. They believe it's coming from the foundation up and not coming down. We had the insurance adjuster out there today. Problem is we have no idea what the insurance is going to cover, what they're not going to cover. But what we have been told so far by the company that's been out to inspect it and by the adjuster that was there today is everything inside that firehouse system's around.
On the backside? Is it, is that where it is?
That's all we have for, other than the bays, it's the backside of the building. But yes, pretty much every, all the sheetrock in the building's gotta come out.
The type of mold is present, it's EP at building materials.
Yeah, it's, when we got the report back, it was positive for mold, and wet building materials. 2 different types of mold, so. Currently, our staff has been moved out of there. Both staff members are housed out of the substation at 143 River Road with our primary trucks.
You have, those trucks undercover or are they outside?
Everything's in cover, undercover. With the exception of the pickup truck.
Yeah, I understand.
Are you
One
moving,
of your tankers.
you moving the other ambulance over to the hill or?
We have not done that as of yet, because we can still store some stuff in the, we have a couple of trucks in the bay right now at the main station. The biggest concern was the staffing, of making sure that the staff was not there. Now that we found out what the issue was, we need to get them out as soon as possible. We did hold a joint meeting with Stephanie, Erica, and Wellington Hill, so that we did this as a joint group, rather than Wellington Hill doing it. And our biggest thing was trying to make sure that everybody had a seat at the table. And work on a collective decision of which direction to go.
We're working on finding them space. I've offered them some space here in the town office building, office space so they can continue their operations. Space may be tight at their south station, so doing what we can to help mitigate any additional costs.
Chief Snyder be gracious enough to offer us some space to store what we need to remove from the stations. Grab pods or storage containers, so. we just have to chuck it up there.
Yeah, Pete, to your question as far as, trying to estimate how deep of a problem it is, I mean, that whole building was built around 1980 on slab. So they're fairly confident it's coming up. So whether that slab, crack opened up somewhere or what, I mean, you have the cost of certainly dealing with gutting wherever there's sheetrock and insulating it out, and still remediating, stuff to stop from happening again. So, it's just, at this point, I think.
Tyler, do you mind just sort of, identifying yourself to the board and telling them what your role is? Because a lot of people don't know everybody in the role.
I'm currently the vice president of the fire department. I was the fire chief for 20 years.
What's your last name?
Millix, Millix.
Thank you.
And Alex, I think they're bringing the engineer, right?
Yeah, the last thing that we went over today is with the adjuster is, he stumped as to how the water is actually getting in the building. We know we have a slope in the back of the hill, or excuse me, the backside of the firehouse. But it's been there for 40, as long as the firehouse. has been.
Mhm, so why not?
The
Yeah.
wall's higher than.
Right, the wall's higher than ground level. He's gotta bring an engineer in to try to figure this out because it's coming in from somewhere we don't know what or where. But we can't open anything up to try to figure it out until we can get everything out of there. Once you start opening walls, it just makes it spread and yeah, we need stuff out of there until we do that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Well, so Pete started this by talking about the contingency line. It sounds like this is something that's gonna need to get fixed sooner than July 1st, when the budget would hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So probably wouldn't go
Well,
in the budget.
Tyler says
It's
he
not
doesn't know about
no.
that.
It all relies on the engineer, the insurance, but the insurance is really a small, give me a small drop in the bucket. I mean, I think there's a 5,000 and a 50,000.
15.
Qualified.
15 and a 50.
50 and 50, if it qualifies. Our insurance companies, as you know, are not always, they don't open up their wallet the right way. So if they can show that it was, whatever the case may be, they're gonna try to get out of it. But even if we got the full 15, it's not gonna be close. Whether we have a proper estimate and a scope of work by July 1st, I don't know. This is kind of all new to us.
It's really.
Yeah, that's why it's really kind of hard to do. I mean, I don't see it as something that we have specificity for. We know it's gonna be something, but, as
Right.
far as like budget deliberations for fiscal year 24, it's in a different,
For our
place.
part tonight, our biggest thing is making sure that we're being transparent and you guys know about it as soon as possible.
I mean, the good thing is we don't have fire trucks sitting outside. We don't have people going to work every day sitting outside, an Eskimo. So we have housing, the trucks are undercover. The people have a place to go to work. They need some provisions for the people that work the overnights. And like you said, they work with the aircraft, some office space if need be. So, we're not, I wouldn't suggest that it's at an emergency level. We have to deal with it. Right. No doubt about it. But I don't think, no easy decision needs to be made or. So to your point, Pete, from the very beginning, I don't even think it's appropriate to throw a number at it. We just don't know.
The reason I'm asking for a number, however, is because I think it's prudent for us to start thinking about it. And if we don't start thinking about, if we know an expense is coming and we make no plan for it, that's the worst possible scenario in my mind. And so we don't have to spend the contingency fund, but we do have to have the money available to fix it. So if you guys could, and budget season is coming to a close pretty damn quick here. So I don't want to put you under any pressure, but if you could make
So the insurance.
within $100,000 guesstimate,
So the insurance company today asked for us to get a basic quote for stripping and remediation.
Yep.
And that is the only thing that we can do right now. Is get the walls open and being remediated. We had that by the company that did the air sampling, and found the mold. All of this is gonna have to go to bid. So this is just to give us a rough idea.
And all I'm asking is that we get that rough idea, so we know where it's
As soon
going.
as we know, we'll be more than happy to
Thank
share
you,
it. I just
because
don't.
I don't want to just not plan for it at all.
I think what we can do is, once you have the engineer, you can probably work with him and then kind of push him along to develop a scope of work and try to put a dollar figure against it.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Is it possible that some of the work is work that would have been done or will be done with the addition?
And that's.
Or is it- Is it redundant?
No.
Are you gonna have to rip down the wall again in a couple of years?
No.
Even with the
Well,
addition.
Can-
So we were
Can this-
trying to work in some of the skinny, like if they have to take the outside shell, we were trying to work in the outside shell to be replaced at the same time, but that's fine.
Yeah, with the addition, the inner walls, with the sheet rock.
Nothing with
the
the
back room,
back.
Christina.
Hmm?
That wasn't gonna be touched with the addition anyway, so.
Yeah.
There's no redundancy.
But
Okay.
if I may, I mean, we are looking at an $11.5 million ask over the next couple of years for new fire stations. Don't get me wrong, I am sure you guys are underfunded in the new buildings. My concern is particularly now that we're seeing a building that is, got concerns. We have requested 2 different departments for significant building projects. Have we looked at what the overall town best interest is? You know, they're coming, I know you guys are working together and I appreciate that. But from what I understand, you came, you know, you went to CIP with requests, you went together for 2 just independently kind of theorized projects, not looking cohesively at what would serve the best total townwide interest of the fire department.
No.
So we
Right,
made,
well, I mean, are we?
What happened is in this last budget,
What's that?
Chief Snyder asked for enough money that they could work on that comprehensive plan. So
So, well,
that's
that's my question.
that's where we're going, is we're going to a comprehensive plan, but they needed the money to get there.
Well, that's my
And
question.
that's
So
not
that
coming.
first tranche of 100,000 or whatever it is, 110 is for a comprehensive plan looking at all services and whether one building may be needed, whether it's worth. Well, that's my point. You know, is this a point? This is a big enough ask now that does it make sense to look at a comprehensive plan across 2 departments and where it's worth investing the money? Similar to the school study. You know, we have 2 buildings, we're aging, so that we have an understanding of where things are at, instead of just coming at it piecemeal, project by project, based on individual building needs. It's a significant sum, and I think there needs to be some forethought, especially with an art request in for building studies. You know, already in there, 40,000. I honestly think the 100,000 to do a comprehensive study involves a look at where the best investment is. Maybe the new site is the best, you know, maybe the site across the street from Wellington Hill is a good emergency, future site of emergency services.
The problem is that one building for schools works. Because no matter how far you bus a kid, it's still within town. However, if your house is further than a certain distance from the fire station, your insurance jacks up.
And I get
So
that.
that's why we have 2 stations.
No, and I get that, but I'm just saying, you know, if we're gonna spend whatever.
We
it is,
have
3
3.
million, I get that.
Yeah.
If we're gonna spend $3 million on one for sleeping quarters, well, maybe we'll build a new building that actually houses the emergency services department.
Right,
Yeah.
well, that's part of
And
why
as long as that is what we're looking at.
that's what we're looking at.
Okay, because I haven't gotten that. It seems like it's just really for engineering on the new site across.
Well, it's for
Which is
engineering,
not-
but the engineering is to include programmatic, like with the school. You had to go and find programs that needed to fit into
Yeah,
the
no,
school before you build
I
a
do
school.
get
That's
this,
what they.
you know, I've actually designed a fire
Yeah.
station. But to my point, without a full look at what all of those things are, so, you know, there is efficiency. Again, this is all for the purposes of efficiency, right? And I'm not saying, I think they need funding, don't get me wrong. I think we need to do something, I just don't need to know, I just don't
There
know
are
what we need
studies,
to do.
we've already had studies that talk to those efficiencies.
Okay.
You know, sitting back here, we certainly,
The total landscape
We appreciate every
change
single
you
thing
have
you're
to
saying,
get.
believe me. We do, and I think you'd be an awesome candidate for the efficiency study, that Pete chairs. Comes in with us. What you're talking about, are, just the very top side, the things you're mentioning, are all things that have been discussed ad nauseum for the last 20+ years. The town has paid, don't quote me on this, at least over $100,000 of independent studies to be done on emergency services in town. So there's a groundwork there. You know, and these studies vary from, you know, one spectrum to the other. One of the things that we were working on in the efficiency committee is that, you know, after much collaboration, we figured out that really the current location of the firehouses serve the population of Wilmington where they're located best.
Okay.
And we've drilled down over the years, all the way down into, you know, using pin maps and heat maps to find out where the activity is and where, you know, is the ambulance better here, is it better down in the north end by the highway? And come to find out that's where most of the EMS calls are. So, you know, we've really gone through a lot more than people think regarding, you know, studying the most efficient operation. But strictly from a, you know, from a firehouse location perspective, it serves the populace pretty well where it's located. But again, you know, your comments are very valid questions. I'm sure a lot of people have that. There's a lot of information out there over the years that People just don't have access to. When I say don't have access, I mean that in a derogatory manner. The studies are out there. They're published, they're there, they've been there, but people don't know that they're there. So a lot of this ground's been gone over.
No, I appreciate that effort, having, being here. So.
You
it's,
know, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, it might be a good idea to put that study on the town site.
Which one, you want all four of them or?
Yeah.
No, the most recent one.
I would.
And that's how we arrived at having an addition to that station, was off of the last study.
Yeah, that's the only other concern I have is, I know those, you guys have spent, I think it's more like 180,000 over 10 or 15 years, but I remember seeing from the presentation.
As far as
my just like
towards it?
Yeah, it worked towards those studies, and I appreciate that. I just wonder if, now that we have remediation issues and significant additional investment, are they stale? Is there like I said, I'm not neglecting that you guys have need. I believe we don't, I know you're underfunded. I know you're in old buildings. I know,
It's funny you mentioned the 180 because the firehouse in our new ET in 1980 cost 180,000.
Tom, do you want to say anything about the CIP first year sum, the 110?
Yeah, I mean, Peter kind of hit on it already. I mean, the 110,000 is to get us up to where we know exactly what can be done and what can be, what we need to do on that site across the street. Again, like Tyler mentioned, all the studies have been done, all the research has been done, all the due diligence has been done in terms of all these firehouses, in terms of where they need to be, staffing, the size, the apparatus, all the stuff is significant for the town. When you combine all three of these fire departments together, it's what we need. It won't change. It shouldn't change. And again, we are trying to just, from my perspective, 24 Old Farms Road, the Wellington Hill Firehouse cannot be touched. You can't do anything with it. It's not conforming on the ground now. It can't go sideways, up, down. It can't do anything. It's not a safe building. We have no clean air systems in it. We can't do anything with it. So the $110,000 is engineering, surveying, and appraisal to see exactly what we can do across the street to keep us up and running in that position in town, along with these guys doing theirs to keep their buildings in the positions that they're in. So they're up and running.
The last study was void of, the last study was completed prior to Wellington Hills investment into the church property.
Right.
So that's why what we're trying to do is get them to the point where they actually have, like Tom said, they have some plans, hopefully all the way to the end to it, but they actually have some construction plans as well as some hardened costs. So we're really just trying to bring them up to where we are at this point. It doesn't mean that, everyone has to, drink the Kool-Aid and we need $50 million on the point. We just want to make sure we're on the same page. The church acquisition came after the completion of the last study, that's all.
Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate the explanation. I'm honestly being the new guy and trying to get up to speed. I'd be interested. Are those studies available?
Yeah, and the one
I'd love
that,
to
the one
see 'em
that
just
sort
for
of goes
learning.
into, with the fact that this is, we're small population wise, we're big area wise. And so, essentially 3 exits. So, it's, the study that sort of goes into where the calls are and, the kind of geography, factors in the geography and the calls and the, I think that would be interesting. I think people in town would be interested in catch up. Cause I feel like what you guys need, both departments, is you need some public education going on to amp up what you're talking about doing, because you guys feel like you've lived with it a long time. But I think the people in town have not been at the table. It's not,
Well, I think,
that,
I don't want to say they haven't been at the table, it's just that there's not really been an overall interest.
that's,
Really, I mean.
Well,
and
I know it's maybe premature, but I'm just saying, have that in your mind, because it's not something you can catch everyone else up with, something that's been a passion of yours for,
if you want to swap
who
people
knows how long.
the card sheet before you go, I actually have every single study in a PDF. One in a single PDF. Just scroll
I appreciate
through.
it.
Keep it in a nice timeline for you.
Before we get to fiscal year 24, because I want to get to that pretty fast and I don't want you guys to leave the room. But I'd like to do, if you have any questions about EDC and that budget, because like, I think, is that why you're here, Bill?
And,
There's someone on, yeah, Matt's on, yeah.
yeah,
I just didn't want to hold them up if, because it's a small budget, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, well, first let me say, I mean, let me put it this way, because I thought about it after the fact, and I'm not always the most graceful, so I don't even know if Mike's on the line, but just to say that I hope my discussion last time at the last meeting didn't in any way come across as questioning your work ethic or your, professionalism, et cetera. I've only known you to be responsive and professional. So if I came across that way, accept my apologies. What I will say, and try to do more gracefully now, is, it's an awkward conversation, right? So you're asking to have somebody, discuss the merit of a budget. And I know this is planning and zoning, not EDC, but I'm not gonna ask you to debate planning and zoning. What I will say is that the budget, we are a small town, we don't need it in, we try not to get into too much detail. We're a small town, we have a planning and zoning budget of around 136,000. We have 22, applications last year. It was 19 before that. It was, I looked it up because I was curious, because I felt bad. I think it was 12 before that. Ashford next door has a budget that's 51,000. 48,000 of it is likely for the consultation services, because again, this is a small town. So I just feel like there's a lot of budget there for a town that has a smaller need than would be represented by 130,000. I don't have the solution to that. I think that I did ask just to inform myself that the relationship with the town of Bolton for a building official is, it's smart in all honesty. It reads well, it's a good relationship. It funds, services that we need effectively. I just think it's something to be looked at. As moving forward, maybe it's not just in the budget season, but I think there is opportunity where we're trying to look at, efficiencies in the budget, looking at big projections ahead, that it's something that could be looked at. By way of EDC, my big question is, I don't even know I don't even completely know how I feel about this yet. But I do question the need, but only because of where the EDC is at. We canceled the October 12th meeting, the November 9th meeting, the December 14th meeting, the January 11th meeting, the February 8th meeting, and the March 8th meeting. There may have been special meetings in there, but that's 6 months of meetings, where there's a contract for consultation services, where it's, and I know they're doing other things, potentially related to ARPA funding and ARPA projects, but part of me feels like we need to get the EDC to get, I feel like the work is important, which is the other thing too, because this town needs to grow economically, and in a smart way. So, I hate to question that validity, but it just feels like there's, again, Ashford, their budget is like $2,000. And I know we purposely made that effort to contract this, but if we can't even if we can't do a sign project, we've been funding for, $5,000 for a couple of years, I feel like we need to take a step back. The EDC kind of needs to try to grow its mission internally, effectively fill out the board. Maybe that's a contingency fund where those services, we see how the next 3 or 4 months go. Hopefully there's interest in economic development with all the most recent, discussions, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, honestly, if you have any, or if I'm just, this is just good to me. But
Matt,
I have thoughts. I prepared a little summary of what we do.
and that's, you're the acting chair of EDC, just for people to know.
Yeah, Matthew Clark, 42 Burt Latham Road. I'm the interim acting chair of the EDC for, I think, 2 or 3 months now.
Thank you for coming.
Excuse me?
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Hello, fellow colleagues or former fellow colleagues on the Board of Finance. Now, our mission is to sort of help facilitate some kind of healthy business expansion in our town. And that means, working with existing businesses and attracting new ones. Our budget for this fiscal year is $23,000, which is unchanged from last year. We have a contract with Tai Chi Consulting Group, who's also represented, John is here, for $18,000 per year to sort of help manage the work that we do. So we have successfully worked to enhance economic development in Wellington. We worked to change the zoning regulations on Phelps Plaza, Route 32 and Route 74 in order to facilitate commercial development there. We worked to create the special development zone, which makes it somewhat less expensive for businesses to propose development in Wellington. We recently had a joint meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission and EDC, where we discussed that special development zone. And the consensus of both groups was that it was a process that worked pretty well. I mean, it worked well in the last, usage of it, which was also the first usage of it. The Planning and Zoning group or board turned down an application development that wasn't right for our town. We, in addition, we facilitated about $1 million state grant to construct new sidewalks in South Burlington Village. And I think that project is about ready to start, or will be starting within the next month or two. We worked to rewrite the South Burlington Village regulations for presentation to planning and zoning. We developed. I just have a few more points here. I just have a few more points here. Just a minute. So, and then we also we have a little website that we pay about $600 a year for. And whereas as Mr. Marshall indicated, we're in the process of thinking about and how to move forward with a signage project. We sent out a survey to town residents on that, which had 34 people respond, and almost all of them were positive. There was 2 that were negative and said we shouldn't spend the money. And Jim is right. We have 4 members right now. So I'm concerned that if we lose any more members, we won't have a quorum anymore. And that's what happened to the EDC, I think 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Erica can talk to this. There was no interest, and the group was just reconstituted and restarted a couple of years ago. Everybody's quite busy these days, and we volunteers get very little support or encouragement. But Jim, Bill, and I have talked about reaching out to the business community in person and talking to people, and making some calls, and we think we might be able to grab a couple more members that way. But that's what we do, and John's here as well. John, did you have anything else to add to the conversation, or anything that I missed?
No, I think you covered it well. I just would point out that simply because the EDC hasn't been able to pull together quorums to meet formally doesn't mean that nothing has been happening. There's still considerable stuff happening behind the scenes. Again, a lot of it dealing with ARPA, the business grants, and then the new economic development strategy session. So things continue despite the problems with getting a quorum.
Yeah, so just to follow it up, it sounds like most of the initiatives, are zoning regulatory related that go through planning and zoning to initiate. They're not, they're mentioned by Economic Development Commission, but they're actually initiated on planning and zoning, which through that other contract with Nike that we have on planning and zoning commission, that's where the bulk of that effort has been. So I'm torn on this a little bit. So I
want to hear a
Well,
little bit.
if I might,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is John Guskowski with Tyke Planning and Policy Group. I primarily work with economic development. I do not work with planning and zoning. And just to correct that somewhat, Mr. Marshall, that a lot of the zoning initiatives initiated by EDC, including the special strategic development zone, the South Burlington Village regulations, and some of the Phelps Plaza area, were initiated and led by the planning and zoning, the Economic Development Commission and our portion of it. In fact, I myself wrote a lot of those regulations independently of planning and zoning, ran them through economic development, and economic development then sponsored them and submitted them to planning and zoning for consideration. So it was an independent process.
Well, you guys oversaw the small business grants through ARPA, or I don't know if you call them grants, but the ARPA
Correct.
money.
The-
That
yeah,
was
the
that
BRIG
program
program.
started at 300 grand. I don't know what you ended up,
70.
yeah.
We
So-
distributed $240,000 in grants. We created and ran that entire program.
Do you want to say something, Bill?
I'd like to hear what your confusion is.
I don't understand the question necessarily.
Bill,
Oh, sure.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Bill Rankin, 96 Fisher Hill Road, been in town for 35 years and a former member of the finance board,
Can you spell your last name?
RANKI.
And you work with EDC on, you're working on the railroad spur
Well,
project.
I was on the board of finance for 2 years. It became very evident to me that we had two revenue streams. One was the state of Connecticut and the second one was residents. And based on, well, projections, and as Peter was talking about earlier, and what we're hearing today, we need more revenue. So I jumped over to the EDC and we've been pushing that effort. And yes, the railroad project that was the former Desiato property, which is now owned by F&F out of Plansville, was my first project to get involved with. And that is, let's put it this way, it's developed, the owner would like to expand it. But the railroad industry right now is very much aware of what happened here with the Trade Center. And they're looking at it now differently until we can get an SDZ. And I understand there's a moratorium on it. I also understand we're going to fool with it, but that was very important for their interest in developing it.
It's quite a different thing, though.
Excuse me,
That's quite a different idea, though.
the rail.
The real idea from a 1.5 million square foot warehouse.
Oh, I'm not comparing that.
Oh, okay.
No.
You're just talking about the
Yeah,
SDC.
I'm not
Okay.
questioning economic needs, you know.
Yeah, no,
This
I
is
know
this
you're
is not a board of finance, you know, that's not even a board of finance. you know,
We don't
purview,
even
yeah.
talk about
But
Time out. This came from the CSX Rail. This is on their website. I've been in railroading logistics now for close to 40 years. My facility that I had up in Palmer, Massachusetts, has been there for 36 years. I sold it 5 years ago. But I paid to the state, to the town of Palmer, the Palmer Redevelopment Association, over 30 years, $2.4 million in tax revenue. And the town was happy with it. And I think everybody questioned me when I got involved with this project, that I wanted to start another one, and I'm 69 years old and I'm retired. But this is a comment from one of the class 1 railroads in North America. And it's about select sites for development. This is CSX Railroad. They look for ready properties on their CSX network where standard land use considerations and comprehensive due diligence items have been addressed. The properties are ready to meet the requirements of a wide variety of manufacturers, distribution companies, etc., so they can come in and develop. So we were trying with the SDC to make something that would fit a development effort, as we were talking about earlier. And we worked on that for over 1.5 years with John's help and Taisha's help.
I don't want to interrupt, you know, I'm not,
You are.
I have no
Go right
intention
ahead.
of, well, I mean, we're getting into territory that really has nothing to do with the budget or the board of finance. I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to debate the merits of the project. That's a PDC decision, that's a PDC. This is about, you know, if the EDC is, I know things are happening behind the scenes, but if we're not going to meet, if we're not, you know, if you can't get the membership, it just feels like the focus first and foremost should be kind of the housekeeping to try to build the, I don't know, but again, I'm not.
We've had a 3-month stall, I'll put it, a little bit of a tailspin. We lost our commission. We lost our commissioner simply because of the social media chatter that was going on with regards to the Trade Center. And it was
going to get in the way of his personal business. And I don't blame him one bit. Believe me.
Okay.
So now we're trying to recruit, Matt and I intend to go out and talk to businesses in town to find out if they would like to be involved in the ARPA's, the strategic plan that we're going to try to put together with all the other boards in town.
Mhm.
And hopefully during that process, we can recruit somebody.
So,
I'm not
so,
arguing,
you know
we're
what
on
I'm
hold here
thinking,
a little
I'm
bit. We're
thinking
on
that
hold.
it would be interesting to, you know, we've got like PZC in the room and, you know, EDC. It would be interesting for the Board of Finance to sit down and hear, you know, and like have a conversation with, you know, the players in the room that's in a future non-budget season
Well, I would like to
time.
say something tonight.
But I definitely want you to, but what I was gonna do after you say something is drop back to fiscal year 24. If there's specific things we want to consider here, I know, I mean, you know, the being left without, you know, the head of the group and Matt stepping in and dwindling numbers is an issue, but I'm not sure we're gonna do something in this budget
Well, that's why.
to address
That's why
that.
I'm raising
And,
the question.
I mean, I don't know
Is
how,
that- Is that contract, do we feel it's beneficial? Do we feel it's,
Yeah.
It sounds like, I feel like there is a benefit. I feel unfortunately like we're not getting the most out of that contract because
Okay.
we're not, because unfortunately we don't have an EDC that's fully staffed and, that sucks. 'Cause I know how hard it
let's
is. I
hear
know how
from
much it is
PZ,
long.
let's hear from PZC
So.
since Walt Parcell. Or
Yeah,
you
Walter
wanted,
Parcell, 75 Timber Lane, also the chairman of planning and zoning.
yeah,
Just in terms of the ask here, obviously two of them are salary related, nothing we can do about that with the assistant land use agent and the planning and zoning secretary. There's a $5,000 item in there for document retention. Wouldn't be the end of the world if that didn't happen, but something should be done. Stuff sat on dirt floors for years, it's finally stabilized, but that's something, if it's sat for another year, probably not the end of the world. In terms of Mike D'Amato and some of the comments I've heard about him and so forth, I can tell you he was kind of put off at the last meeting, Jim. And you opened up by kind of semi-apologizing for maybe the way you perceived it.
I apologize.
Yeah. You
But
ought to
not-
consider the way you speak to people. I'll tell you that. Because you come off as arrogant and you put people off. And that guy has done nothing but been professional. I've been on this commission for 13 years. I've seen it when it wasn't so good and I've seen it now. Much more business-friendly commission. The guy's a professional, 100%.
And he cares.
He cares. The work he does is top-notch.
And I haven't.
Despite some of the things that were floated out there during the whole warehouse thing. The guy's done nothing but good work.
And
for
that's
us.
great, but that. I'm not
He's
questioning
actually
your work.
less money than what before, with what we had prior to him. We found it impossible to hire someone. And what we did, there was an issue, that didn't last long. So in terms of the way it's working now, this is the best it's ever worked as
And
far as
again,
I've
I'm not
seen.
questioning his work ethic, and I kind of resent the fact that, you're implying that, because quite frankly.
No, I resent the way you speak to people. And when you spoke to him, you upset him. Okay?
And I admit it. it's-
Enough where he had a conversation with me about it. And you felt the need to apologize for it. So you ought to consider that. You're a public figure now.
I felt the
Jim.
need to apologize if I came across the wrong way, but
I
that was
think-
not the intent. And I've said it, Walter, and quite frankly, that's enough.
yeah, I think it is. But, so you're talking about your budget in particular and you offered something that might be up for
Yes.
delay.
That would be the records.
Was there anything else you wanted to say about
No,
fiscal
that's
year
it.
24? Okay.
Well,
Thank
what, just to close it out, the records, I think are a good idea. And I
Yeah.
think they're important. And I think it's unfortunate.
I know,
that
I think
long,
the
but-
records are good.
I think from.
Is that the codification thing or what?
No,
No,
no.
that,
Let's
This is-
scan these records that have been damaged.
And
by-
that's.
oh,
the
yeah,
gist
oh,
of
the
it.
damage records.
If you recall, Mike shared with you
Of
that
course.
he, to not put a big hit in one year of the budget, he was suggesting spreading it out over multiple years.
Okay,
That leaves documents that have issue and potential growing mold in the basement that we just mitigated of mold, and where the ant handler is, or where the staff works in this building. So if you're gonna cut, I see, well, offering it, I think you should consider. it.
yeah, and it's an increment, it's a step.
Yeah, and I think I shared with some of you
Okay.
a suggested way to potentially cover the whole thing.
Pete, did you have
Are we
something?
talking about line 171 here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I say, Samantha Hills just messaged me that she's trying to raise her hand to say something, but
Oh.
I don't see her on there. I don't know.
If you can't see
Samantha?
this while you're sharing screen, this stuff.
Oh, yeah, I see her now. I'm sorry. She's on EDC. Sorry.
Hi. I cannot believe I'm going to put my camera on because I just was listening today. I didn't even know this would be a topic. And I just wanted to speak to what James had said about the budget, even though I realize it's not for this particular, this year. At first I was like, wow, you know, I understand your point, and I feel bad, of course, as a member of the EDC and that we haven't been meeting. But at the same time, then when I was listening to Matt talk and Bill talk, and John, that there are things that we are working on, and I behind the scenes, and as other departments have mentioned, we've sort of been in the recovery from COVID. So that was a big focus, and getting the ARPA money was a big help to those businesses. And now we're looking at also being able to do a research on what type of development people may want. So I feel like, you know, we've been at that plateau point where we're just trying to maintain and keep some of these people, you know, these businesses alive. And now hopefully we'll be able to see the flight. Oh, you're not seeing my hand motions, but like we'll be able to see things go in flight, you know, and increase and start to see the development. And for me personally, you know, there have been different things that have come up for me where I wasn't able to attend meetings. And I think I'm one of the people, but yes, we lost our chairperson partly because of some of the tactics that were just being brought up. You know, people who are volunteering, it's hard for them to have their integrity questioned. It's really difficult. And then when that becomes the focus, then we lose the focus of what we're actually trying to do and accomplish. And it makes people not want to volunteer because they don't want to be under scrutiny like that. In addition, yeah, so I mean, we have this year to be able to do that. But I think also part of the reason that we haven't been able to meet is I thought we were trying to cooperate and coordinate and change meeting dates so that we were doing a more cooperative effort with planning and zoning. So being a person who is pretty conservative and likes to cut wherever I can, I see your point there, but I also think that, you know, it's something that should be revisited and see what we can accomplish, you know. So that was all. I just wanted to put that out there that we're in recovery. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Steph, if I could just share one last point. A couple of those meetings in those last few months were changed and canceled. So they weren't in conflict with some other large meetings in town. And so that people.
There's been a lot going
Time
on.
was it split, right?
Yeah.
The large school building projects, so some of those conflicted there. So they have a whole host of things working against them all at the same time.
Yeah.
But.
Let me tell you, it's hard to find a meeting time. As I squeezed the meeting in 22 minutes. Well, there is, on the records retention, if I remember correctly, several years ago, we spent a lot of money on a IT solution for the building department. Are those records now electronic, so they don't need to be stored in a file cabinet? Or do we still need to print a copy and keep it in the vault or something?
Yeah, so that.
I can't 100% about it. I don't think so. These are older records.
Yeah, those
They
are,
weren't scanned.
I was just.
So
looking
now
at,
everything is scanned online, and no, I don't believe we have to keep
hard
a
copy.
physical copy of them. No, so we're not really adding to what's down there.
Yeah, that's, that
Yeah, no, I don't
that was
believe-
my question,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'll get confirmation from that, but I don't believe.
There's been a lot of money spent over the years on the GIS project.
Yeah.
That's something that's still ongoing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, I think we can move on from EDC and PZC and
Thank you, everybody.
whatever C we want. Unless anything else.
Thank you.
So we can, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming.
That was a
Gee,
great explanation.
That was a great explanation. Thank you. Okay. So, shall we go to the ambulance budget?
Ambulance.
Ambulance, yeah. that's the
I
other
think
one.
it ought to be increased. I think I'm about to have a heart attack.
Well, you're well connected.
Increase it, we don't care.
What?
Increase it, we don't care.
That's what,
Like you can only.
Okay.
I just want to increase it so you come pick me up. That's all.
Hopefully they run it.
Yeah.
So-
Go ahead.
Well, it's the only one that's jumping out is 26% higher than last year.
Right. And it's got a growth trend on the 5-year, definitely. But the last year, I just want to point out, looks like it was negative. Well, in this one, it was negative 4%, being with the transfer out being 528,000, but you have to add back, I think it was 90,000 of that, because that was the year we went up from 10,000 a year, our pattern, taking it out of Fund 17 to apply to the ambulance payroll. We went up to 60,000. That was, but not something that we were cementing as a change, but something we were doing to address a short-term sort of spurt in competitive EMT salaries. So recognizing, what happened with the pandemic and just overall in the ambulance industry everywhere. So that's what that was, but it was also 30,000 for the tower money, right? But anyway, so you have to, that number is falsely low in the 5-year, because that went up for that. So what
That
I'm,
makes the next number falsely high, right?
that's what,
If you have a falsely low number last year, then it's a falsely high number
that's
this
true,
year.
that's true. But it still goes from, it's still, I mean, it's not all that, so, but yes, it is some of that. So anyway, what I'm gonna put on the table is, well, first of all, I want to ask something. There's in your payroll budget, your ambulance payroll budget, there's an administrator for a salary of, or whatever, pay of 11,300.
Correct.
Okay, so that is not something that's been in previous years.
No,
Is
so
that's a new position?
it's not a new position. So basically, since we've had paid staff at the fire department, which the first one started in 1967, we've progressed with the pay step up to the, back then it was one person, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, and over many years, due to the call volume and lack of volunteers, we've had to, go to the 2 people 24/7. Along the way, and more recently, when I was the fire chief, there was discussions, and Christine may or may not remember, and you can chime in on this. There were discussions back and forth about taking the paid staff of the fire department, and say, let's just make them town employees. What ends up happening is you have 4 full-time people, how many per diem?
And
So you have 14 or 15 employees, and you're relying on the volunteer, fire chief, according to the bylaws, and the labor contract that is the boss, doing it on a volunteer basis. So, over time, the types of things that need to get done on a daily basis regarding, managing your staff and scheduling and, employee relations and anything that happens to come up with any other business, it gets overwhelming. And what the board of directors identified was the need to spike out a certain amount of hours every week for the fire chief to basically just strictly do administrative work to keep up with this. So, think about it in these terms. Public Works has less employees in the fire department, and the person who runs Public Works doesn't volunteer their time to do it. And so it's one of these things that the fire department over the years always kind of gotten forgotten about, that we're running a business down there. However, within the last 20 years, there's been discussion about making them town employees. I was a huge proponent of making them town employees, for ease of operation, to give the town leaders or the first select or the board of selectmen a little bit more input and in the operation of it. But that was always thwarted. There wasn't any real discussion or any desire to do that. One of the big concerns about that was the increased insurance rates and workers' comp and all that. So we basically remain a private contractor to the town of Littleton, by contractual agreement. So the 10,000, give or take, the change that's in there, is strictly to allow the administrator that is in charge of all the paid staff to have some times dedicated to administering the corporation or the company when it comes to the career staff.
Is that an existing staff person you would apply to that, or is that a new hire?
The fire chief, the current fire chief.
Okay, so going from unpaid to doing that administrative part as paid.
Correct.
Okay,
It's labeled as a stipend.
It's a stipend position, yeah.
so like a flat rate, or is there an hourly rate attached to that, or what?
To do the hour, it was an hourly, what do we figure out? It was an hourly rate of 10 hours a week.
So 10 hours. a week.
10 hours at-
To do administrative work for the administration of
So,
No, what's the rate though? 10 hours at what?
21 hours.
Because I have to say, this is the first time that sort of popped out at us.
So I was
Wasn't in the
trying-
narrative, wasn't
trying-
a new position.
I was trying to bring that, because it was in our presentation, or in our just budget presentation below, when we talked about ambulance payroll. And I was trying to bring it up at the last, when we did our presentation, and then it got really sidetracked, so it never even.
Okay,
talked
but
about.
that's a new expense, so, that's one thing that kind of stands out. Another thing is, you also said at that presentation that there was well, first of all, I don't know if do you guys want to weigh in on the adding the position issue?
Having scheduled first responders on a 24/7 schedule, I sincerely sympathize with the need for a paid position on that. I know at one point we had a guy that was doing, that's all he did, 40 hours a week. And it's insane. But the question I had is, that's $21 an hour, 10 hours a week. So you're taking it as a stipend. So if you only do 8 hours, you get paid that amount. If you do 14 hours, you get paid that amount. So it's more like a stipend than an hourly job, but that's how you came up with the number.
And it's, the wording that the board of directors have come up with is actual timesheets of showing on our schedule of the hours that are done. So that it is calculated out.
Did we
Okay.
solve the 26% question? I mean, the fact of the matter is that the payroll budget is up 5.75%. That's the bottom line from last year. That's what it's up. And there's a spreadsheet, which I'm assuming that every member of the board got. There's a spreadsheet showing exactly what that 5.75 consists of, which is the 3.6 is wages. There's a contractual obligation on our part with the union to provide a 3% increase. The other part of that is 3 of the 4 full-time staff are at the top step. We have a newer full-timer who is not at the top step, so there's a step increase built into there. So that's the 3.6. The other increases, I think, if you guys have that, are pretty self-explanatory regarding payroll taxes, health insurance, uniforms.
Okay, so that's why it's 3.6, because the presentation said we have a 3% placeholder, and then.
There's a 3%, no, there's a 3%, the question I believe was that there was a 3% placeholder when we're looking at the possibility of, when we negotiate the next contract.
Right,
But there is a step increase.
There's a
next
step,
year.
there's a step increase.
and there's a step increase for 3 of your 4 full-timers,
No, one.
one
That's why it's-
full-timer,
That's why.
and 3 of your 4 part-timers, did you say?
No.
Or
I didn't say
Okay,
no,
just
no.
one. Okay, got it. Okay, and, well, but, so one of the other things that we're interested in is, the town employees have a 2.75 in their, in this fiscal budget for the impact on contractual raise. You guys are going into a negotiation, there's just a question, does it make sense to start, to have something like that where you're going in and probably they're gonna ask you, what are you budgeted for? That you're already taking it away from what the rest of the town employees are getting
Well,
as an increase.
well, two things. One is that we put that in there to be comfortable. Number two, during negotiations, I don't know if anybody's sat through negotiations with a union. It's a very long, drawn out process. And, our goal is to not show our cards, of course. Our goal as administrators, the goal as administrators is to get the best labor contract as cheap as you possibly can. That's the ultimate goal. The goal of the union, obviously, is to get the most money that they possibly can. One of the problems in dealing with municipality is that when you start setting things that are out there, and you can look at it both ways. They know if you set it 2.75, they know they're gonna get 2.75. They can afford to. If you set it at 3, they can go after that, but you certainly have to have some faith in the people negotiating labor contracts that they're going to apply the philosophy. They're good stewards of the taxpayers' money.
Well, who is at the table from the town side, since the taxpayers pay for that
From the
increase?
town?
Mhm.
Nobody. We're a private contractor in the town only.
Okay, but you see what I'm getting at here?
No, I don't.
Okay, it's public money
Agreed.
and there's no one at the table for a negotiation on a contract.
Right, Christina negotiated the first contract.
Yeah, like 15 years ago.
Right, and we've asked for people representation before, no one's seen them step up to the plate to do it. So myself, I represent the corporation, and Ron Diak is the president, represents the corporation during the negotiation.
What did you say you've asked for?
We've asked for representation before. Christina sat at one of the negotiations
Oh, you mean from someone from the town side?
from the Board of Finance side.
Okay, because a minute ago, I thought you were saying, no, it's not necessary because we're a private corporation.
I didn't say that. What I said was that you have to appreciate the separation between the town and us as a private contractor of the town, that legally, we're the ones that are responsible for negotiating the contract. Would we like some participation from somebody that has some type of financial background in municipal finance to sit with us? I don't think we close the door on that, not at all.
All right.
And I've asked over the years, I've asked the chairman of the Board of Finance for representative to sit with us to do that.
Okay, I'm new at this, being the chair. I did not see any kind of request for that, so,
What's up?
You haven't started negotiations yet.
No.
That's why you haven't seen an act. They haven't started.
Okay. When is it?
I've never, when I was part of it, I never sent a letter requesting it. I was saying, I'll talk to the Board of Finance, and say, listen, we're gonna go into negotiation.
Right, it's because, normally in contract negotiations, the people directly related to paying for it are at the table. And that's where the Board of Finance would come in, I think. That's just, I'm new at this, I'm looking at it in a fresh way.
But you also.
I know
again,
it's not
you have to-
historic.
You have to appreciate the clear distinction between the relationship of the fire departments. I said, the fire, what the hell am going, come on.
Mhm.
That we're basically a contractor in the town under.
No, I understand that, I've seen the
And
contract.
the EMS is the exact same way.
And what?
The EMS budget is the exact
Yeah.
same way.
Right,
Yeah.
I know. Okay, so, so you've explained the 3.6 and that is a new position in the budget. The other thing I would mention is, I think we can take the workers' comp figure down. It's got about almost 2,500, 2,400. Given it's an exact dollar figure, it's already been paid for this year. So the actual is to the dollar equal to what was paid in fiscal year 22. And I don't see any point in carrying it over. And I consulted with Donna about
We would have
a
to.
figure for that. Wait.
Yeah, I have to yield to Donna. We don't.
Yeah,
deal with-
yeah. So we can take that down a little bit.
And just for the newer folks that are on the board, we don't deal with actual money.
Gee, you're in the right place. We do.
The town, my point is that the town finance office really provides all of our financial services for us. So there's no actual transfer of funds that come to us per se. They do all of our payroll, they do all of our account management. And we're just like any other town agency where we want to spend something, we have to come to the PO and get it, and we assigned off PO and we give it to the town. We're not the keepers of the cash.
Mhm.
Oh, come on. I know you're keeping cash someplace there.
You can find it.
You're
Lock it up.
rich.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll split it with you, you can find it.
So the other things, going down to the revenue side, the other things we're looking at is, it doesn't, I would recommend we not repeat the 60,000 out of Fund 17. I think, that would be 2 years running. We're hitting it 110,000. Fire apparatuses are up in 7 figures versus 6 figures nowadays, as you guys well know. And, we've got a second ambulance, and it's just, it doesn't seem like that's because of ARPA, it just doesn't seem like a wise way to treat Fund 17 that both fire departments tap into. So I'm thinking, we were kind of stabilized as putting about 10 grand in a year. Last year was that year that with the wages, that it was an unusual year. Now that we're sort of, moving out of that, I think we should take that back down with a little cushion, like to 20. And then this is a program, so you have to stay with it. But, make that 20, and then can't find my paper that I had that's on. Take the usual contribution you make from the tower lease for 30, which we've been doing for the last several years standing. And then put a placeholder in for Union to kick in on ambulance service that they can't reciprocate with. That does, I know you all always say we get revenue, but the revenue is such a small portion of the cost of running the ambulance. And the cost of.
The call volume is small.
Let me finish. And, in fact, I think you've said that the revenue is something like 20,000. So, it's like, so it's a small amount, given that, the costing out the Board of Finance did when we kind of dug deeper on the service to Union and what the cost works out as far as proportionally and going down into the cost of the ambulance, the cost of running the ambulance, everything, not just payroll. It came out to roughly 10% of what the cost of running the ambulance is. That's a different, that's a total figure. And ironically enough, it also factored into the number of calls proportionally with the other calls. And it also figured in with our population versus their population. They're about 1/10 of our size. So the point is, this is something that we've been doing for 15 years. And we feel like it's been an exercise of patience on the part of the Board of Finance, but we definitely looked more deeply into it, like a year ago or
Just this
whatever it
Board of
was.
Finance. I got
So-
accolades from the other Board of Finance regarding this agreement.
What, that they,
That we're bringing in $20,000 additional monies.
well, that may be, but I feel like, Tyler, I feel like the same situation, and Alex is right in the middle of it, is going on between Summers and Stafford. It's sort of like a one-way street. And so what I'm saying is, let's get serious, because it's been a whole year. And, when we were at the presentation, what we heard was there hasn't even been a meeting, that we're waiting to do a meeting. We're not getting anywhere. So I'm going to put a placeholder in for Union to kick in 30,000, which is less than what their 10% would be.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Wait. Yes, you can make a comment. I'm just.
So you referenced the staff agreement. So the
Mhm.
staff agreement is for 40,000 for over 600 calls.
That's a partial year figure.
Correct.
It's a half year figure.
Right, because we don't have any idea what the next figure is gonna be. It could be 30 or 40,000. But that's still for over 600 to 700 calls. We're talking 58.
That they're on all those calls?
I'm sorry.
They're on all those calls?
Stafford runs about 1,500 calls.
Mhm,
of those, Summers goes to over 600.
mhm.
So when you use that same formula for the union staff, the union in Wellington, we're nowhere near $30,000.
Well,
We're at zero.
yeah, we're at
I
zero.
don't disagree, that's, we
And-
got
and-
13,000 last year.
And you know, I know, Pete, I know, just a second, you know, the figure that they grabbed some ARPA money and made a gesture. But, you know, at the time, I felt like that's a nice gesture, yay, but everybody knows ARPA's going away. So, what I want to see is a serious conversation acknowledging it's not a mutual aid situation. And honestly, you know, when it comes down to it, I don't understand why we're in a primary service agreement with union if there's never going to be any sort of acknowledgement that, you know, we're dropping everything and running for every call there.
We're not, we're going to EMS calls.
That's it.
Yes.
I think a far more realistic placeholder would be 6,000 to start with. And I think that the reason we entered this PSA agreement was that finances were different when the agreement was entered. At the time, we were making more than it was costing us. Over time, what with medical services being what they are, changing finances at the national level and interference with free market, it's gone the other way. So while I agree that we should be collecting something from union because it's the finances are no longer in our favor, I think a $6,000 figure would be far more realistic than 30.
But how do you come up with 6?
Stephanie, can I ask a question?
Yes. Let me just ask Pete how
I
he comes
came
up
up-
with 6.
I came up with 6 because I'm looking at, for instance, the 600 calls for, what did you say, Alex? It was-
So right now, the way it's figured out, this, for the first 6 months is $40,000.
$40,000 for 600 calls.
So that's what it was based off of the figure that they gave us.
So if we're going to a 10th that many calls, it's a 10th that amount of money, which would be 4,000. So I said 6 because that was half of the 12 we got before. So I thought.
If I had to guess, it's gonna be between 70 and 80. 70 and 80,000 for the full fiscal year.
Oh,
We just don't
for
know.
them, not for us.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you see where I came up with the 6?
I do.
No.
Does that sound reasonable to you or?
Not at all.
Sounds low to me.
It's that.
Would you guys?
No,
we
because you know
can't
what?
go
Wait, Peter,
By the 10th of a
Stephanie,
call.
Peter.
Yeah, can I just finish for
Listen.
1 second, Lisa?
Let him finish his
No,
math
'cause
and then I'm gonna have you drive
God.
5 minutes. Lisa, just a minute. Let him finish his math. What were you saying?
Well, a 10th of our calls, our ambulance calls are in union. A 10th of our total ambulance budget is not just for EMS in the town of Wellington. Part of that is that we're paying to have firefighters on duty in the town of Wellington to respond. So we can't get them to pay an EMS bill for our fire protection. You have to factor that in. No, I'm done. Go ahead, Lisa. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Lisa?
So what I wanted to find out is, Tyler,
Yes.
a long time ago, what Peter was talking about is that we used to be on the upside, and that was because the state of Connecticut, Medicare, Medicaid services, and private insurances did not scrutinize, did not do a global view on what each run is worth. And then over time, over the 17 years it was, or whatever it has been, Medicare and Medicaid services have become quite proficient by state, by state, by state, by state, by episode of care, by episode of care, right? And we talked about this in the past. Long time ago, I said to you, Tyler, you can't just do any sort of runs down in Lyon Manor because you're going to get audited. You're going to get a rack, right? So over time, you guys grew this BLS service. But not every single call that you go, every call that you go on is not funded. And what I've learned in this exercise is that you all know that you're going to run calls that are not funded. Why? I'm not done.
I don't know if the patient has
I'm not
insurance.
done. I'm not done. Why would you run a call that you wouldn't get funded on?
Because
Because I call 911.
Wait. So
Somebody's got to answer the question, not everybody.
Yeah, no,
Let Tyler.
Tyler's gonna answer.
Why would the question is, why would the ambulance go to an emergency call if we know the person's not gonna pay? Is that correct?
Yep.
How the hell do I know if the person has insurance or not? How is it even remotely possible? I have no idea if the person has insurance that rolls over the
Tyler,
highway.
take it down. Tyler, take it down. Because you do know, because you're BLS. You're not ALS. 1, 2, why are we funding Talent? Why are we running at night for Talent when Talent doesn't run at all? You're the one that runs Talent.
It's called mutual aid. You have to, we're part of the mutual aid system.
So where is our mutual aid agreement between Talent?
Where's our mutual aid agreement with Holland?
Where is that PSA with Talent? Why do we have to do that?
We don't have, so Lisa, the way the region is set up is that each fire or each ambulance has their own designation as ALS or BLS. We belong.
All of them are BLS.
Excuse me?
All of them are BLS. ALS is out of Wyndham.
That's not true.
Talent's BLS too, isn't it?
Yes, there are ALS services out there,
But
Lisa.
they're
within
not.
our region.
Okay, Tyler, you're getting all heated up. Why?
Heat it up at all. I'm trying to understand what you're asking, man.
Because what I'm trying to say is, why is Willington having to pay the gap? We got a spreadsheet of collections, and you have private insurance on that collection, Medicare, Medicaid on that collection. You have mileage on that collection.
Correct.
And you have all the write-offs. Do you know what I can tell you what the write-offs are. Do you know what the write-offs are?
Yes, I know what the write-off is.
So the write-off to everybody else in the room is what the ambulance decides, this is the cost of doing this run, despite what they already know Medicare and Medicaid services are going to pay. That's to answer your question. How do you know what's going to get covered? You know, Tyler, before you get there. Everything is fixed. Absolutely, you know. Absolutely.
Lisa, how would we know what type of insurance?
Because every single run delivers, every single BLS run, when you get to the emergency room, gives you a rate. And it's like $279 and $8.25 a mile. So if you do 30 miles, if you go up to Union and back, you know your mileage run, and you know if you get to the ER, you get paid a fee. If you go up to Union and there's no transportation to the hospital, you don't get any coverages. Nothing.
That's correct.
Because you're a BLS truck.
Well, no matter where we go to Holland or we go anywhere else, and there's no transport, you don't charge it. There's nobody to charge.
That's right. That's right. So then why isn't Willington doing everything they can? If you're already a private company, why aren't you doing everything you can to become one in full that's self-sustaining?
I don't know how you want me to do that.
How do you want to do that? Go ahead.
To become, you mean an ALS outfit? To become, or
No,
just to become sustaining?
So I guess the question is, why does Union not have to pay anything for the services you provide, but Wellington has to pay all of it? Why is that? Can you just answer that?
Well, we are in business to provide fire and EMS protection to the town of Wellington. We agreed to be the ambulance service for the town of Union at the time because we saw an additional revenue stream that would offset some of the taxpayers' money going into paying for these guys who are at the firehouse. That there's really nothing more to it than that.
No, but there is no revenue stream. But there is no revenue stream, Tyler.
Because the average collections over our existence, having the PSA in Union is about 20,000 plus a year. So we know that that's what the average is going to be. So that's what we're looking at. There can be a differing of opinion. I think me and Seth probably differ. I can say that we get money, we get 20,000, and you would
If
argue
you
that,
know
well,
you're going to get $20,000, if you know the amount of calls you're going to get, and you know you're going to get an average of $20,000, how is it that you don't know what every run you're going to get revenue on? You know before you get there what the call was.
But we don't know what kind of insurance that they have. So
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're not. No, it doesn't. No, Stephanie. Stephanie, listen. I'm talking to the chair now. Stephanie, there are certain rates for Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, and I'm not sure what S meant, but the key is that there's only certain rates. It's not like you can get, if you're on Medicare and you get picked up in the ambulance, it's a certain rate when you deliver to the emergency room.
There are fixed rates,
But if you don't deliver to an emergency room, you don't get coverages.
That's correct. That's right. You'll get paid. Right.
Right. So why is Wellington paying? Why is the tax dollars from Wellington going to pay for this service? Why? Why?
I think I explained how it came about. Whether we have the, you have to forget.
No, it doesn't matter. And Tyler, it doesn't matter. Tyler, it doesn't matter.
You can wait while he speaks.
Absolutely.
Tyler, I have waited while you spoke. I've waited while you spoke for years and years and years. You're not delivering on what you originally promised. And that's the bottom line.
I just want to take it back to a couple of points because I think we're kind of at a little bit of a dead end here, but a couple things. The point about Tolland is in the mutual aid breakout, which I haven't seen it updated to this year. No, I don't have it because it's not the chart that Alex gave us last year, which captures mutual aid calls that Wellington has done in towns around us, the calls they've done for us.
It was on the bottom. It was the last page of that report.
Okay.
It was the last page.
Well, at any rate, but when in that was just last year, it was Wellington did 7 calls to 1 ratio in Tolland.
Our biggest.
We did like 51 calls.
Our biggest mutual aid receivers from us, where we go the most, Stafford, Tolland, and then Union.
And what?
Union.
Yeah.
Union's third on the list.
Right.
And you don't get paid for it.
Right. But it's really, we have at least a 2-to-1 ratio with every town. We have a bigger one. We have a 7-to-1 ratio with Tolland. Wait, time out. It's largely traceable to the fact that we are the only ones around who are running a 24/7 ambulance.
Not true.
Well.
Okay, where is it not
Tolland does
true?
not, and they have.
I agree with you.
They do not, and they have like 9 EMTs or something, 8.
8 to 4, 7,
Yeah.
wherever they work. I agree with you.
Tyler, don't you run Tolland? Tyler, don't you run Tolland?
No.
Excuse me?
No,
Don't you run the dispatch in Tolland?
Yes, ma'am.
The dispatch.
Okay.
I run the dispatch.
You run the
operation.
dispatch. So wait a minute, you run the dispatch in Tolland and you're not a Wellington taxpayer. And you're the one that's telling us, that we should be okay with this ambulance service.
Listen, so wait a minute, respectful. Back up a minute.
You own property here, but you're not, but
Listen,
you're not a
I
resident.
still have my house in Wilmington. I can guarantee you I pay a lot more taxes than you do, believe me. I still have my house
I
in
don't know,
Wilmington.
let's
I
not
pay
get down to
taxes.
that. That's kind of.
Seems like a huge conflict of interest, if you ask me.
The issue of the mutual aid system, it's not a Wellington, Tolland, Yukon, Mansfield problem. It's not a regional problem. This is a nationwide problem. There is a problem with people volunteering to get their ambulances out. We happen to be in a location where, as you just alluded to, Stephanie, you're absolutely right. Tolland does not have 24/7 employees. So between
Right, that's smart.
roughly,
That's
stop talking.
smart.
Between 5 and 6 in the morning, their volunteers go out. If there's a
Right.
second call, if they don't get out, then somebody has to go. It's either Vernon
Right.
or it's us. Mansfield is 24/7. Stafford is typically 24/7. Our calls in the Stafford are second and third calls because the call volumes are escalating over the years. So it's an entire problem with the system. It's things that people are working on constantly to try to staff. But I'll give you a very quick, short example in Vernon. You know, Vernon can have at any time of the day, have 5 or 6 calls at one time. They've had one ambulance on. One ambulance.
Yeah, no, I saw that
That's
we go
smart.
there, but they've never come
A
here.
lot of mutual aid.
At least in
And
the
the
whole
mutual aid
neighborhood.
said, listen, this isn't mutual aid.
Right.
And they ended up having to spend.
Tyler, you grew this animal. You grew this. This
But
was
you know-
supported by me and the people that were on the board long ago, and you were at the helm. And now this is what we have, and it's very disappointing. I feel totally responsible by supporting you all those years ago.
Okay,
It's a calamity.
Another point I want to make about what you were saying about roughly, and I'm sure it's a rough number, 20,000 in revenue from calls and union.
I have to yield to that.
That, what's that?
I have to yield to that on the revenue.
I'm
It's
so sorry.
around 20,000, 23.
Okay, yeah, it's probably, yeah, and maybe a little more, but that still fits the kind of 10% thing that's in my head, no matter what numbers you factor in. Because in that spreadsheet where we looked at fiscal year 22 receipts, or it was like 220, it was 235,000 for the year. So 10% of that is 20,000. And you said yourself, that's what the revenue is that you get from union. So I'm holding to this idea that I kind of think it's reasonable to say what we do for union, given that they don't have an ambulance, they never respond, it's not a mutual aid, is basically 10% of the cost of our operating our budget. There,
Yeah, but it's also, Stephanie, it's also 10% of the trucks and the maintenance and everything.
No, it's all
For the
in there,
ambulance.
please. It's all in there. That's.
The reimbursement from insurance does not,
No, it's apples and oranges. I'm saying when we did the analysis last year on the Board of Finance, we came up with a roughly 10% share. And it just kind of keeps getting supported whenever you turn it another way. I'm just establishing that that's the deal is in my mind. Because I'm
Right, it is.
persuaded, because I've seen enough stats now. And I'm just saying, I think we need to get serious about it. So that's why I'm recommending a placeholder that's half of what I think it should be.
I do
For
think,
that.
I think Pete, what Pete mentioned does have some validity. The paid staff are not only there just for the ambulance, they're there for, accidents and fires as well. So if, we could probably,
oh my God.
we could probably look at, that figure you're coming up with. It's not a true representation because of the duties that they have, as fire, rescue, and EMS. So Pete, I think you're on.
It's also not a true representation for covering Wellington.
But the rest of your firefighters are volunteer, right? You do have volunteer firefighters.
Yeah.
So it's not, I mean, they're there to man the ambulance, staff the ambulance primarily.
No.
That's not primarily what their work is.
The paid staff are there, number one, to staff the ambulance.
Mhm.
If there's an accident, they take a rescue truck in the ambulance. If there's a fire, they take 2 fire trucks. But they're.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Firefighter EMT,
I
that's
understand.
their job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or someone, a party to be named, will take one of the other vehicles. Okay,
We'll do,
I've said, I don't know if other people have, this is,
do you want, would it appease anyone if there was a member of the Board of Finance to sit with us and have a conversation? Face to face with Union, besides emails and phone calls?
well, we originally asked for them to come here and we would have a conversation. And, but it's really, so the select woman tried to reach out and then did not hear anything back. And then
I don't think
Alex,
they didn't hear anything. They're not going to come and sit before your Wellington Board of Finance anymore than I'm gonna go sit in front of unions.
I just
Board of Finance.
assume they sit with, with you guys,
Yeah.
with
And I think
this, I mean, I think it'd be
They're
good if
working
the
to make
select
that
woman was
happen. If
there.
they don't come to the table, it makes it very difficult. So they're working
I'm-
to get them to the table.
I'm not saying, I'm not like.
When does the
I'm not that
PSA run
bureaucratic,
out?
I just want to see some movement on it.
You have it through perpetuity.
When does the PSA run out, Stephanie? When does it end?
No, that's not something that renews all the time. It's sort of like, I don't know how we got into it, but once we got into it, it's kind of set because the state tries to.
Oh, that
have those
can't be,
arrangements
that just
covered
can't
every
be.
town,
You
right?
can't just get into you can't just bankrupt somebody because you can't, that's not the case. It can't
Well,
just
no,
go
I
on
didn't say
infinitely.
go- No, I already said I thought that we should go revisit the arrangement because,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to hold that. I mean, but that's to me, I realize you guys made the agreement. You saw a reason to do it, but the taxpayers really are footing the whole thing, except for the 20,000. But still, that's 20,000.
They're working on a
Yeah, but you know what
conversation.
the thing, let me
Okay.
just say something. I
Let me just, how
let me
about
say
this?
something.
Is there any questions regarding our operations budget? Can we move off?
Yeah, this is about the operations budget.
This is it,
Because we're
yeah.
talking about a placeholder for union in the revenue line.
Fire budget.
Oh, the fire
I was
budget.
hoping if there's more questions, can we do them next week when we do preparation? I think it's just getting
I-
a little too.
What I'm trying to do is have the conversation this week because next week,
Yeah,
we can do some spillover, but we're not gonna have time like we've spent tonight on
Stephanie, the fact of the matter is,
deliberations.
you can create, the Board of Finance can create any placeholder that you like. We'll certainly do our best to negotiate to the best of our ability to that number. It's a negotiation. You need two sides to come to the table to negotiate, that's all.
Right, I understand that.
So we'll do our
We
best.
understand that. Okay, thank you. Are there comments about this, the ambulance budget? And is there something we're gonna talk about on the fire budget?
I don't think so.
I just wanted to make sure everybody did get the updated version of the.
Jim?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I did or not. Is it in today's packet, the updated?
What's that?
Alex just asked if we had the updated fire budget.
Yeah, well, it should be the stuff that she printed. I'm pretty sure it is, because it came down a little bit because of the fuel, right, the propane and oil.
Yeah,
That one?
the propane tank was paid through LoSiP, and that was approved already.
Right, we know that.
Yep, and then reductions for.
Oh, yeah, the 8,000's been out of there since you presented that night.
Yeah, but I didn't have.
Oh, you went ahead and did the numbers. Okay. Is there anything else, Donna, from that? Okay. Okay.
So are we still, let's see. We're just talking about one here, right? So we're still at 10.6.
Yeah, 10.62.
All right.
What are you guys saying on that? Anything on that?
I think we ought to just beat up
Yeah.
Steve Schneider for a few minutes.
So, yeah, 10.6. Any other suggestions for bring it down? Do you want to, do you think, do you want to put the thing in? Or
Oh, yeah,
calculator thing?
yeah, I mean.
I mean, the only other thing that, let's see if I don't know what else there is. It just, you know, like budget wide, did you guys have any other issues? Because I feel like I kind of.
Budget wide,
put a lot of it on the table.
once we got past the library.
Okay. If we wanted to. Part of the email she sent. I think that's it. Yeah. Is it in the printout though? The FD budget?
I think Peter had it.
Yeah, yeah. So
Go ahead, blame me.
No, I'm just saying, I don't know why it would be in one and not all of them.
No, I
That's
actually didn't see it. I asked if it was. in
Oh.
there.
that's confusing, right?
I could have maybe asked them to go back.
I'm right.
Okay. Okay.
No, I don't think we got another
I don't think
copy. I think we just have the.
We have it electronically, I just didn't print it.
You want me to?
Well, here's one,
I got the original one.
and it's a 10.62, right?
Yeah. Well, 10.62 is what I was just told is the current.
Yeah.
Anybody else like to see it? I have another copy.
Yeah.
I would. If you don't mind.
Sam, do you guys want one or do you want? It's in the
Is it in the?
Yeah,
emails.
it's an email, I can look it up. I got it right here. In that attachment.
Did you have
There
something
we
else on
go.
it?
Oh, yeah, I have it right here.
Okay,
Let's see that, 'cause I know I have it.
Oh, that's what happened, because this was the one that got messed up downstairs, because it was the only one sent in the landscape profile,
The CIP.
and I ran out of time.
There we go.
yeah,
That's resolved. Which.
yeah, it's the,
Oh, it's the bill.
okay.
There it is.
So it was, so the propane brought it down from 12, like about a 12% increase to a 10.6. Because favorable rates on oil and propane. Okay. So.
Here we go. No, that's fire marshal. Here we go. What we're doing on installing the radios.
For the ARPA.
The 800 frequency, the state police.
All of the
Yeah.
apparatus are done. The only radio, the only base station remaining is to finish the one at station 49 up here. All of the portable radios or handheld radios are supposed to be in towards the end of the month.
Beautiful.
And then it's just waiting on the state program.
Yeah, what are those costing a unit
40,
for the handhelds?
$4,100 a piece-ish.
Oh, there's only three or four vendors that are out there. They can
No,
definitely discuss this.
you're going
So we're buying-
Motorola or.
Yeah,
something
so
like
it's outfitting every piece of apparatus.
Yeah.
A couple of the chief officer vehicles and then 40 handheld units between the apparatus and officers. For both towns, or all town-wide, for $235,000.
That includes
And we
public
spent
works.
$234,900 and pretty.
Public Works been up on it
Yeah,
for a while.
looks great.
How's your reception?
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Donna,
We're
Public
talking.
Works Director gets it in Ashford, so
Yeah.
it works great.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do.
What is a 613?
That's the second ambulance, that's the new,
So we're already putting $6,000 of maintenance into it?
that's,
Yeah.
towards the budget?
Yeah.
Yes, because 2011.
You have to do oil changes.
Yeah, we saw the oil changes and right now that truck is running,
It's not new, Chrissy.
it's not a new truck.
Well, I know, but it was
that
also, we were told it wasn't gonna add a whole bunch of costs to the
Well, we
bottom
dropped the
line.
other, the other expense, the other 513 down. To try to offset some of the cost. It's a couple $1,000s higher. But we did drop some of the expense for 513. But 613 or A613, which is the new one that was purchased through ARPA, has tenfold been running more than the other one, because every time the other one goes out, it's totally the hard.
So that's what I was trying to ask you, like the other day, there were calls that came in simultaneously.
Yep.
And we used both ambulances, right?
No.
Oh.
Just the green, just the.
Oh, I thought there was a day that we went to 2 calls at the same time.
There has been a couple of days, but that's still the volunteers, that's not a paid staff thing. But there have been a couple of times
You
that,
can have volunteers run the second ambulance?
if we have them around,
They show up.
And so we've had a couple of
I
accidents.
thought
that-
maybe there'd be a union thing about that.
Nope,
No.
nope,
Okay.
because if there's a second call at night or during the day that's an accident, or we know that there's 2 people on, like myself or, one of the other officers that are on the air, and I need a second ambulance, as long as we can get it, we can run it. There's no.
Well, it
that's
should
why-
be really ready to go because
It is ready to go.
the equipment's, or the outfitting is twice what the cost of the ambulance.
You're
is.
absolutely right.
And
So both,
it's an
the-
older guy, can that stuff be transferred over if it needed to be, or somehow harvested for, the first
So the
ambulance?
second, whatever the backup ambulance is all, is set, it can run out the door right now to go to a call. Currently, it cannot, it is out of service.
They're set up as twins.
They're set up as twin, so that either truck can run out and go to a call.
We're talking fraternal twins, because one's red and one's green.
That's correct.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, the intent was to grab the ambulance so you
You're
can
so
rob
bad.
service without losing revenue.
Great, red is
And
dominant.
if volunteers grab it, then that's great. That's all better. It's extremely rare.
Yeah, it's not a very, it doesn't happen.
So because I don't know exactly how this works, and it's probably not gonna work beautifully, but if something broke through and you got green lighted to finally get to replace the old lemon, would you be able to use some of that spanking brand new equipment and outfitting in the new one? That you got for the backup
From
ambulance?
the equipment perspective,
Yeah, I mean, can you save something
Well,
there?
yeah, so some of the equipment that's on the current truck would go into the new truck.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Stair chair, the power lift, those are 50,000 plus savings.
Because you got some Cadillac kind of stuff in the ARPA deal, right? I mean, you got some really good state-of-the-art chairs and stuff.
The overall plan, and what was explained at CIP last year when we were discussing this, ARPA, is even when we get the new truck in 2 years, the green truck's not going away. Because if the other one goes out for service, we still need to be in service. Something happens, we get into an accident again, we need to have a second ambulance.
Mhm. Okay, but
We don't let Tyler go.
the maintenance is,
Well, yeah, so we're saving 3,200 in maintenance on the first one, but we're spending 6 on the other.
potentially, yeah.
And honestly, it was a crapshoot of what,
could that come down a little bit or no?
well, I'm sorry,
Could that come down a little bit?
I'm hoping, but it's a crapshoot, we don't know, because we've only been running a second ambulance since September. So we don't really know what the
Oh,
cost
come
savings
on,
are.
you know about multiple ambulances.
Why? I mean, the only thing we can really go on is when you look at what's the average price of an oil change for an ambulance?
$480.
$480. What's the average price of tires? What completes that?
1,500.
Brakes.
22.
We already up to $4,000. So if you want to make it 4, have at it. It's fine.
My fear with the red truck is that's been a lemon since day, well, not day one, but
Mhm.
one massive repair could hit it, if we just dropped it so it just covers the basics. That if it is out in one massive repair, it's gotta come back to board finance. We have no problems bringing it down and making them equal. To make it the same as it was last year for the ambulance repair, it's just the same thing stands as in years past, if something major happens, we gotta come back.
What do you think of that?
Yeah,
We have no problem splitting it equal. We don't, between the two trucks. It's just if something major happens, we.
I don't know, but just like the library is up $100,000, you guys are up $200,000 in the last few years, since 5 years ago. For the ambulance budget, and then this budget is up, and Wellington Hills is up too. So this one's up for 122, and now it's 168. Wellington Hills was 116, and now it's 146. Which, there was one year that was really high, 28% a couple years ago. But in general, we're just spending a lot on emergency services in this town. And then when you add in potential 11.5 or whatever it's gonna be million, it's a lot of money. It's a big percentage of our budget overall. And these percentages just aren't going down.
And a lot of ARPA and CIP.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
really, if you look at the spreadsheet, when you look at each of, line item, and aside of if you take out the vehicle maintenance and the numbers you're talking about right now, Christine, I mean, a lot of the increases, I mean, are these, the telephone, electricity, the oil, again, it's just like anybody else in your house, it's just stuff that you can't really do much about,
Yeah.
But your point's well taken.
Yeah, some eyebrows raised like you didn't buy the amount, but in fiscal year 20, it was 470 grand, and now the ask is 667.
For the ambulance?
No, yeah, for the ambulance
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
So that is 200 grand growth in 5 years. That's a lot. So.
Yeah, we're looking at, how we're replacing the ambulance. I mean, it's been a 30% increase in apparatus, in chassis. We used to.
No, I
I
understand.
mean, it's just ridiculous.
I understand.
Ridiculous.
It's just, you're trying to be.
I guess one thing I'd like to say is, when you go into these negotiations, maybe let them know that we really are having some trouble here with our budgets. Like, it's not, I know that's a thing that happens in the negotiations, is that you need to have someone from the town to say, we can't afford this. If you want a 5% increase, we can't afford that. Sorry. But there isn't anyone at the table to say that. So I'm gonna pass that on for you to let them know.
Yes, ma'am.
But there's also been times when paid staff have foregone any raises over the years, and everybody forgets about that.
That's true.
Last few years?
The last few years, but previous years.
Okay.
It has.
No one's asking for that, though. No one's asking for that.
No, yeah, but no one appreciates that they did that, though. Everybody forgets it. So all you're looking at is what's in front of you. You're only as good as your last budget. So these guys have done that because two of the guys are residents of the town. They understand. So when Tyler was chief, when I was president, we talked to them and they forego their raise. But nobody else in town gave up their raise. So please remember that.
Okay, anything else on, what's that?
Nothing. I'm getting tired.
Yeah.
I got fired an hour ago.
Okay. So Donna, you caught the adjustment on the ambulance maintenance.
So it was 6,000, and so what is it going to be now, 4,000?
I think it was 4, yeah, or was it split with the
Yeah, I
other?
think Tyler's a 4.
Okay,
4, okay, and is there another line item? Or is that it?
I think that was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
I caught that, yes, thank you.
Okay. So you wanna introduce, or do you think
Sure.
it's?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna be here next week, so.
Yeah,
I do
yeah,
wanna
you
show
gotta
you
do
guys what I was playing with on the mill rate calculator thing that we all have.
Yeah.
Can I share my screen?
You should be able
Let's see. Imagine
to keep this sort of
No, I can't. I don't think I
touches
can
on
show
the.
that. Okay,
Can I preface it a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the idea of this, when we're calculating, when we're doing the, the magic fund spreadsheet, the Rubik's Cube of the Board of Finance, it's a time when we're thinking, what is so wrong with the idea that we all do, we practice in our personal lives, which is save up for something big coming. And we know there's several things in CIP that are big that are coming. Most imminent, because we have a referendum, we know that the schools are either either the new K through 8 is going to pass, or we're going to fall back on doing repairs that have been put off and that are going to continue with a 100-year-old building and a 70-year-old building. So the thought is sock some money away on a year like this, but earmark it for something to do one way or the other with the schools in Fund 3, which is help me with the name of that. It's a targeted
Special project.
special project
Reserve.
reserve. Yeah, it's as it says right there.
Yeah.
So we were kind of playing with that. Christina put it into the model as something that we could look at and then see impact on, everything, mill rate and everything else. So that because we know if there is a new school, there's going to be a sort of shock effect in the, when the bond payments actually kick in, and then it goes, then it sort of slows down again, but there's like the fourth year.
Well, the third year, it's half of the bad year. But
Yeah.
That gets.
So we were playing with that this is a year where we could actually do that to the best effect, because there's no costs competing yet. So you're kind of banking it for the rainy day that will come. And I'm calling it the shock absorber.
Yeah. Yeah, so you all have seen this, right? This column, this B column is, this number up here is the amount that all of these budgets as submitted are. Then this is K through 8's budget, this is Region 19's budget, and then this is our total expenditure, which is almost $20 million. And then these are all of our revenues. And then these are the applied fund balance we've had 650 in there because I think that's what it was last year. And then when you get down to here, you see the mill rate, what it would be, and the fact that it is 0.12 over what it was last year. I mean, under. So the mill rate would actually be less if we did nothing. And with 650.
What was it last year?
490.
That's what I thought was less than that. It was this 650 was plugged in because that was the closest round figure to get it down close to our existing number. Yeah.
And right now, this is our fund balance. It's at 15.5%, which is very high because our policy is to have it be between 8 and 12%. So if we took 650 as we did in this example, it brings it down to 2.394 million, which is 12.2, which is on the high side. So this tells us we could take a little bit more than 650 to make it all balanced, but which would bring the mill rate down even lower. If we made any cuts, like we just cut $2,000, that's gonna make it go down even lower, right? So the thought is though that we should add in 500,000 or even $1 million or 2 million to put into the reserve, because we're gonna have to come up with $6 or $7 million in the next few years to make those bond payments starting in 4 years. So in order to do that, we have to put away some serious money. So that's the thinking.
Just for,
So you want me to do it?
yeah, let's do it and look at it.
like the $1 million.
So, which you're adding, looks like you're adding to your spending and definitely would show up in Erica's budget looking like that. But it's kind of canceled out. I don't know if we should try explaining it like checking accounts and the
Is-
savings
Is
accounts. but
103 in your budget, Erica, or is that
Yeah.
separate?
It's in the selectmen's budget, isn't it?
Or,
It's a transfer out, so it's in Erica's budget.
It's like,
Remember.
it's like the capital reserve fund at 4, which is also a transfer out. And
No,
it's-
I said,
and it
I-
would be in the CIP plan too.
the only reason I was asking is I was wondering if it would look like it was coming out of the town budget. It
Yeah.
increased the town budget, or it was increasing the town budget because Erica was asking for an extra $1 million. And I,
Depends on how someone wants to spend it on social media.
well, that's always the
Right,
case.
but that's not what, I mean,
But
it comes out of the selectmen's budget, that's the place for it to be, so it will,
so the way
Not
it's
town
it's
expenses
separated out on
separate
this
from-
form, but it's not separated out
that's
that
correct.
way on the budget
Right.
line.
Yeah, it would be in the, we do
Would be in a
a
separate-
separate, the cover sheet we have for our budget that has the pie chart on it, shows you a separate capital outlook. And so you can kind of see drawn out of the whole selectmen's budget, what of that is capital, and so it would appear in there. But yes, it would create a significant increase in the operating budget, but it's easy to see it parsed out.
It's not,
Mhm.
yeah.
That was
Yeah, and I think
exactly
we
what I
could,
wanted to know.
I think we could
whether it
probably
was
try
a
to
percentage.
tweak how we present that budget so that you can see the spending separate from the capital expense.
Brings it down to 11.69. Joe was just asking if we,
That in both range, right?
If
8
what?
to 12, yeah, he was just asking if we applied 750, what it would do. And what it does is it brings it to 11.69.
Like in one of my scenarios too.
Yeah,
But what if we did it as, what if we did it as,
Can I ask what that does to the mill rate?
yeah,
Ten
so,
Yeah,
mill
it
rate,
did-
right? Those are
yeah.
separate.
So- yeah, it brings it up 1.8. So to 33.08. I mean, just for everybody's, just so you can see, if we do, if the bond, if we had to pay that bond, the big bond payment this year, the big one is like 4.4 million. So if we put in $4 million, which is what it will be, if that's with the auditorium, it's 3.1 without it, but then it goes up 8 mils. And it goes to 39.37. So we just have to imagine that 3 years from now, we're gonna be looking at that number in here if this thing, if it passes, and we're gonna have to pay it. So we need to put some money aside. I don't. see
well,
why we can't.
that's the shock absorber part. You don't wait until that happens and then freak everybody's budget out. If you plan for it, you do some now, you do maybe a little bit uptick in the mill, but not a major one, like, maybe like 1. And you just like, and you try to trim the budget enough to come down to reasonable percentages in the feeder to the big number. Then you're planning for the future.
Can I ask a question to both of you? And I think I know the answer, but just so we can talk about it. Regardless of the outcome of this referendum, we're still looking at needing to do some significant things to the buildings that we have, and not just the schools. And so
That's what this is.
and that takes care of trying to plan for that and
Absolutely.
put
It's for
into-
both of
and put into what we've deferred maintenance for years and really starting to fund some of that.
So this fund isn't dedicated to a specific project or set of projects.
I
just thought of it as schools because.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at, because we know there's a school need, whether this thing passes or not.
Okay.
But there's other needs as well. So I just want to make it a point, like, if we're saving for a school project, we should be saving for a school project to offset what we need to do one way or the other. If there's other things we need to fund for, we should plan for that too,
Well-
potentially, but, you know, I just would hesitate to say we're doing this because we're trying to fund some school project, and then it goes to do something different 3 years from now, and the school doesn't, has to come before.
I think that was my point, whether it was
Whether
this
it's
school
a
project or
new
not, that it's a
school
school,
or
because we know we have
or-
things everywhere.
And that's what I'm trying to get, you know,
But-
is it defined as?
I
It's-
would really rather see that line 5 change for transfer to FO3 for building project reserve. And because we're gonna have fire departments, we have.
I disagree,
But-
only because I think we
Only
can do a
because-
separate thing for that fire
I do
department
too.
as well. I'm not necessarily against adding as well, but I think we need, if we're gonna do something like this, we need to be planning for projects. I think we should have a long-term capital reserve fund, period, but the town doesn't like to do.
Yeah,
that.
but I don't want,
So-
yeah, I think it's kind of a problem to make it a miscellaneous, because then it becomes
agree.
obscure, and really what we're trying to see is the impact on, because they're not gonna be on the same bond. It's either way, whether it's.
I would like to see a line 5A then transfer to FO3 for fire department project reserve. And if the town decides not to fund fire departments and only fires fund schools, well, that's that, but if.
Do they have
I-
to, do we have to, the town would have to vote on it as part of?
That's a part of
Yeah,
everything.
I would
yeah.
say-
Well,
As a budget,
As part of this.
I think
as a
we
part
have
of the
to
budget,
vote-
but it's not independent
Well,
of approving. a
We,
separate
I mean,
budget.
No.
right now, there's no
There's no part.
there's no project that far
Right.
in the process, which is why I think you hear folks say, and I certainly would say to people there, it would be difficult to get this bond at the point they're at in their process, right? There's no impending
Right, well,
referendum for
that's-
those
I'm-
things. But I
They're
think
distanced by
if you
some
talk
time.
about this, by the time you have your budget hearing, and then you're meeting for final appropriations before the referendum after that, you will know whether or not there is a new building project or not. Right, so that's March 28th, and then on April 3rd is your budget hearing. So you'll be able to have a lot more solid, you could make a change to this.
And,
If
and
need
Pete, we do have the capital reserve fund, which is Fund 04, which is in the CIP plan. And we have been trying to ramp that up and put a larger percentage every year. It's up to 460, I think, in the coming budget that's included. We can make that bigger. We can add more to that. And, and make it as healthy as we want it to be, but, that just hasn't been our trend.
Yeah, the difference there, as far as I see it, and I could be, this is just my prejudice here, is that you put it into capital, just like people didn't want to change it from school to building. If you change it from fire department to capital improvement, you've watered it down and now you're not going where you want to. So that's why I would prefer to see it go that way rather than do capital improvement. And I understand what you're gonna say,
No,
that
I
they're
hear-
not far enough along.
No, I hear what you're saying, but I think that buildup of dollars matches the capital improvement plan we have. So the things that are in that plan go with that fund, that 04 fund. And we know that in, a short period of time, we will have a decision on a very real project. And trying to account for that. I think by putting it in the reserve fund 04, those dollars would go along with that plan. And some of those things, some of
Yeah,
those
we do-
buildings you're concerned
we
about
do
are
have
in that
those
plan.
dollars, and we do have the dollars in CIP. They're actually coming out of line item 910, which is the debt service line.
Yeah.
When it becomes an actual bill, that's debt service to pay, then it comes out of 910, which is also in Eric's budget, but it is in there. It is in there, Pete.
I mean, and honestly, Pete, one of the things that, to me is a long-term budgeting thing that I, talk to Donna about sometimes, but is our dependence on leasing. It's really not good as far as spending your dollars correctly. Because I know how we got there, but all it is spending a whole lot more in interest
Somebody,
And-
can we just reiterate just as the new guy, how we got there? You know, like I understand.
I think people thought it was an easier, it was a palatable sum, an easier sum, you know, so the annual payments could be in the operating budgets, and it was sort of like, I want it now kind of thing, you know, partly
And it was stabilized payments.
stabilized payments across the life of the lease.
But also we had, you know, we've been through a recession that in 2009, when I started, we were in a recession. We couldn't do anything, which is why this scares me. Because those were really bad years. Those till like 2015, we didn't have money for anything. So, but we don't have anything leased in the CIP plan. This going forward, we don't.
Nothing new.
There's not a lot of things in here, actually.
But we did that, I mean, I think we did it by design because of
Yeah,
the.
yeah, no, I
the
think
big
everybody
thing on
feels
the
like we
table.
don't want to do the leasing anymore. but-
No,
Yeah, I think
just
everybody
thought of
feels
how
that.
long it had been, right? It's one of those things that was the process we were using. And in the term that I've been here, we've been talking about how do we change that? And there's starting to be a discussion to move away from that. And we slowly did that with, one vehicle where we partially paid. We kind of cut down the amount we're leasing. So I think there's an appetite to move away from that, but it certainly served its purpose
Yeah.
during that
really
time
did.
frame.
But it's kind of like a tap, you know,
Yeah.
you're gonna have a scar even if you try to get away
Yeah,
from
because
it.
there are things, when we look at the public works budget, and there are dollars within that budget that were from 7 years ago, and then they're still paying for, they don't have anything to do with the actual work that they're doing. It's the vehicle in order to do it, but it's not for some of the new
Right.
things, but it has to be
And
there.
and the flip side of that is if you look at the fire department's budget, you don't see $1 million payments. I mean, $100,000 lease payments for fire trucks, because we did pay for those outright.
Right.
So they're not showing up like year after year to remind us about them, but
They're there.
they're there. Yeah.
And I don't know, Tom, you're like, what are you, 10 years past your replacement year for the, for that one fire truck that's like still golden. So the other thing is, there was a story recently, and I'll share it with you guys, but it's a town that in Massachusetts, I think, that basically kind of financed money to buy a fire truck, or they kind of did it, they sort of did it right, they saved is what they did. And so, so that's part of what kind of fed this idea. But I was gonna ask Donna, is there a way to look at, if we put like something in a big reserve fund, is there any way at all that you can look at doing something as simple as, T-bills or CDs or something, while, given that it is not going to be accessed for a while? It's not gonna be applied for a while
I don't think the town can invest that way.
at all, even if it's a safe investment.
How come the library can? Or that's what they were saying they're gonna do, but.
I mean,
They've got
any
a separate
five
private
oh one C
funding.
three can do anything, I mean, they can invest.
Yeah, it's not our money.
But we should have
We
that,
give them,
right?
like, we can
Because
give
it's,
them
if you, for something like this where you wanna sort of.
T-bills are what just took down Silicon Valley Bank.
Well, anyway, it's something to look into, or ask our auditor or something, if there's some, or financial advisors, because it is, a big lump.
So, I mean, I don't think there's anything to decide with this now, but I just wanted to float the idea.
Yeah, I thank you. And plus, they'll all wanna go home and play with their calculator, their Rubik's
Yeah,
Cube.
and so here's a scenario with $1 million this year, and then $1 million coming out of general fund, which brings us down to 10.41%, which is okay. That brings us to 33.08, which is a 1.8 mil increase. And then the idea would be you do a close to 2%, it's a 2 mil increase the next few years until we and have that help.
Oh, wait, is that the one? That's with the pipe, that's not 1,000,000 that's 1,000,00750.
I,
It was
oh,
a
yeah.
million and a million, yeah, because
Did I do a million?
that, because that one's not.
Oh, I did a million at the bottom.
In the wrong
Yeah.
place.
Okay,
Oh,
million. Okay, that's better.
yeah,
That's a 1.3
so 1.3
mil increase.
mil increase.
And if we made a few cuts and got this number down lower, it could be even, we could probably get to a 1 mil increase pretty easily. But then the question is 1 million the right number?
And then
To
what's
really-
the percentage of fund balance? What's it do to that?
1 million,
10.4, so we're in the,
we're still
you
in
know,
the
a little
zone.
above median of the overage, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
but then we also have to remember that we have this other expense with the firehouse coming up. We don't know how much that is. And that's usually where we use the general, the fund balance for, so stuff like that.
and that's one reason not to delay. You know, I mean, as far as figuring out what the it is. But I know what you're saying about, because you guys have already talked about collaborating on, you know, cutting out any duplication and figuring out all the between plans and stuff like that, so. Okay. So I think we maxed out, right?
I'm,
We're
yeah,
ready
I'm half
for-
an hour past.
We're
my
ready for
bedtime.
next week. Oh, gosh. So
Does anybody-
shall we do present to speak?
Yeah.
Okay, present to speak. Anyone would like to speak to the Board of Finance, even those in the room?
When you guys second, can you stop sharing so I can look at the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Christine?
Yeah.
I see you trying to type something.
She's kicking you off.
How do I?
No one online anymore. How many are online?
Okay.
Did they go to bed?
I'm here. I'm here. It's Nick Tell, 49 Myrtle. I first want to say, I think you guys handled tonight's meeting very, very well. I was very impressed with everyone tonight. So wanted to give praise for once, I guess. I like the calculator that I believe Christina had shown there. You know, for me, my biggest thing is let's get away from, you know, spending $15-20 million in bond interest and try to generate this money where we're not paying interest. So I just want to compliment that again. And to me, getting off the land itself, but just talking about a contract, I find it troubling that potentially if contracts of any purchase of large money come to the board of finance for approval and such, or the blessing, that we're not making sure that the appropriate people are signing the paperwork, because that was the vibe that I got earlier when I had asked the question and kind of got brushed off. It seems as though it doesn't matter who signs it and such. So again, great job tonight, I think, and thank you.
Anyone else present to speak? Okay. Well, Peter, I don't think we have to vote on this because we can't vote on this. Oh, did someone have a speak?
Yeah, I think he was just giving us a thumbs up.
Oh,
Giving Nick a thumbs up.
litigious?
Yes.
Okay. It was just a guess.
Matt wants to say something.
Matt, do you want to talk?
I just wanted to say thank you. I know you guys have been at this for a long, long time and, you know, many hours, and thank you for the good work. And I was very impressed with Christina's spreadsheet. I rejoined later, and I thought that was very helpful. So thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Now Peter's got his hand up. for real.
That Peter online.
Oh,
I'm me.
Peter online?
Yeah.
My hand's up too.
Oh,
for
that's
a
not,
different
this is
reason.
the one. I know. So Peter,
Hi, Peter Latinchich, 97 Trask Road, and I was giving a thumbs up. I too was pleased by what I heard tonight from the finance board and your diligence in pursuing your task. It was good to see that the alarming increase in emergency services is being addressed. I think everyone in town is concerned about that, and I'm glad to see you're looking at it. But I'm especially pleased to see a good plan coming forward to address what could be large-scale expenditures on the schools that I think everyone supports. And I, for one, certainly like the idea of a fund that focuses on paying as we go, which is what I think I'm hearing tonight, versus a massive spending plan where we would be spending $23 million on interest that would not fund anything in our town. So kudos to everyone and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay, Ralph?
Good evening, everybody. It's been a long night for you, I'm sure. With respect to the mill rate calculator, it's great. It looks at the fiscal year you're looking at. I'm not sure it goes far enough into the future to really realize the impact of big ticket items. That's all.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm working on another spreadsheet for that.
Yeah. It's still in.
Christina, I'll share mine with you.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're ready, unless I can't see anyone raising their hands, so. So
Move to adjourn.
Just adjourn.
just adjourn.
Adjourn.
The meeting will now adjourn at 10:33.
Oh, thank God. Oh, I'm sorry, I wouldn't.